Looking all statistics with some prime analytics, we got ourselves a group of funky fresh critics. Home runs, some free throws, goals, fights, and touchdowns. Pocket says it all, so it's best you stick around. Analyzing this, analyzing that, putting a perspective on every single step. Now turn up your volume and join the team. Things are about to get started, it's 1st and 15.
And hello, wherever you're out there listening. Welcome to WBTA Studios at the heart of Main and Center in Batavia, New York. WBTA 100.1 FM, 1490 AM, 106.1 FM. This is 1st and 15. I'm Pete Zehler alongside Mike Rose and Tylor Klien. And Mike Rose of the Batavia Daily News. Tylor Klien, our NFL analyst here at WBTA. Last week, we talked all things NFC West. This week, we're going AFC West. We're staying on the West Coast, going with the AFC. First off, how are you guys doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. I think we also should note, by the way, that we are recording this prior to the NFL schedule release.
Yes.
I think that's an important note. So if you hear us kind of not going too deep into a team's record specifically, we do not know the schedule yet. So don't crucify us for that.
Yeah, those should be out by our next episode, right, Mike?
Yeah, NFL
Thursday.
schedule will be. We're recording on Tuesday. It'll be out on Thursday. So. We will have the full schedules. There's some leaks already. We know some early Week 1 games, a couple games from some of the teams we're going to be talking about today. Actually, in Week 1 we know already, but not the full schedule until later this week.
Yeah, to give you a little bit of the scope of the show, normally we do record on Thursdays. However, Buffalo Sabres are in the middle of a playoff run right now. They're actually playing while we record this on Tuesday. I'll mention it here. Thursday, me and Mike are both going to the game to cover it for our respective networks. Mike with the Daily News, me with WBTA. So Thursday wasn't really a possibility. Friday, I have beer league softball. Wednesday, Mike Rose has his golf league. Today was the day. Today was the only day we were going to get this recording in. Now that we've started, we can't stop now. So we're here on a Tuesday, and we're going to talk all things AFC West. And we're going to do the same thing as last week. We're going to go from the worst team last year in the division to the best team. And that means, naturally, we're starting with Tylor Klien's Las Vegas Raiders. And the Raiders, talking about the worst team, they were the worst team in the NFL last year by record. I don't think they were actually the worst team in the NFL. They had the worst record in the NFL.
They were the worst team in the NFL.
One of the teams in the Super Bowl last year.
They did.
The season.
That's true.
They did beat the New England Patriots Week 1.
Yep.
Don't forget about that. Let's talk about the Raiders' offseason moves. Let's talk about the free agency moves. We'll start there and then go to the draft, since obviously their draft is so high profile. Free agency was pretty high profile too, though. The big signing that we're going to talk about here a little bit, obviously, Tyler Linderbaum. They signed a guy that has a case for being the best center in the NFL. They signed him to a 3-year contract worth $81 million. Linderbaum, formerly on the Ravens, now on the Raiders. And, I can't tell you how many times last year Tylor Klien texted me or called me and complained about the Raiders' offensive line, to the point where I just, stopped answering his calls at one point during football season. So I can tell you that from what I understand from Tyler, this is a big addition for the Raiders. Let's talk a little Tyler Linderbaum, because this is obviously a big profile signing.
Yeah, no, I mean it is a massive, massive signing to Raiders fans that remember Rodney Hudson and how important he was to Derek Carr back in the day. I think Tyler Linderbaum is exactly what Fernando Mendoza is going to need to start his NFL career. He is the perfect player for the Raiders to go out and get this offseason. And it does so much because, Jackson Powers-Johnson, who was he was a center coming out into the draft, and they've kind of moved him around. Now he can just focus on being a guard. There's never going to be the question about, well, is he a center? We need a center. Is he a center? He can focus on that. Colton Miller hopefully getting healthy next year. It's a massive jump start to this offensive line next year and going forward. So it's huge.
Yeah, and I think I will say my dad is also a massive Las Vegas Raiders fan, and he too complained about the offensive line every single week of the last probably 2 years watching the Las Vegas Raiders play. So when I told him Tyler Linderbaum signed, he was absolutely floored. He was very excited, and I think, he was massively overpaid. I think we should note that
Absolutely.
Tyler Linderbaum got wildly
Yeah.
overpaid
Absolutely.
with the contract that he got. But for the Raiders, it's probably going to end up being well worth it because of, like Tyler said, the offensive line was in shambles. It allows Jackson Powers-Johnson to just settle in as a guard now and not have to worry about, is he going to play center? Now we need him at guard. Now we need him over here. Now we need to give him to my water. Let him just figure out what he needs to do and stay there. And Linderbaum will bring a lot of stability to that offensive line. I think that center-quarterback relationship is an underrated one.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the NFL, and so I think getting him in there right away with your rookie quarterback, who we'll get to. Obviously, Fernando Mendoza, I think, will be really, really big for the Las Vegas Raiders.
And also, like we talk about how it benefits Mendoza. I mean, this is also a huge add for Genti. It just helps Genti so much. I mean, everybody knows the problems that Genti experienced last year with that offensive line. He broke records for how many times he was tackled in the backfield, carrying the ball. So it's huge for him as well. I mean, it's just huge in general for this offense.
I mean, there's one player that's guaranteed to touch the ball every play, and that's your center.
Yeah.
And, it all starts there, and the Raiders make a high-profile move there, getting Tyler Linderbaum. A couple other moves they made in free agency. They get a pair of linebackers. Nakobe Dean signed a 3-year deal after playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. Nakobe Dean was very big their Super Bowl year last year. He had some injuries, kind of flew off the radar a little bit, but a guy that historically known as a quality linebacker. And they also signed Quay Walker to a 3-year, $40.5 million deal. And that's a lot of money spent on linebacker, but the Raiders shore up their probably weakest spot on defense with 2 good linebackers, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about how you don't think the Raiders were actually the worst team in the NFL last year. This was the worst team in the NFL last year. I mean, their linebacking core was laughable how bad it was. I mean, their entire defense was laughable how bad it is. Cornerback, linebacker, defensive line. I mean, I know there's Max Crosby there, but other than Max Crosby, there's just nothing else there. So, yeah, going out and getting these 2 linebackers is a huge, huge boost for that defense. It's just something that the Raiders haven't had in a long time. The Raiders have needed a really good linebacker for a while. I mean, they had Robert Spillane, a couple years ago, who went to the Patriots, but they really have not had a linebacker in years. So,
yeah, Spillane's probably the best linebacker they've had.
Yeah.
In the last, 5 to 10 years.
It's been a long time.
Like, we're going back. They've been looking for a linebacker since Ronaldo McClain.
Yes, exactly.
It's been a struggle at that position. Yes. So Quay Walker, a guy who's had 100 tackles every year he's been in the NFL over the last 4 years for Green Bay. Nakobe Dean. They're both Georgia guys, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So
I think
they intersected on the same Georgia team, in fact. So those guys are going to be accustomed to playing with each other, which I think also is going to help. And I mean, it will just add so much. That defense was literally Max Crosby.
Yeah.
I mean, he played like 97% of the snaps.
This defense has been Max Crosby.
And if he didn't make the play, nobody was making the play. It was a wrap. So to get just some NFL caliber starting talent in there is big. And I think Quay and Nakobe Dean are both quality players for that linebacking room.
Those are definitely 2 guys that'll make a difference on that defense. And I'll go through the rest of their free agent signings quickly here. Malcolm Kuntz at defensive end, they signed to a 1-year, $11 million contract. He comes back, formerly was a Raider. Remember, he's a guy they used to be excited about back in the day, Tyler, before he kind of trailed off in his career. Kwity Paye signed on a 3-year, $48 million deal. That includes $32 million guaranteed, another defensive end there. I think he used to be a Panther, if I'm not mistaken.
Most recently a Colt. I don't know if he was a Panther.
He was drafted by the Colts.
Okay, so he was a Colt. I was thinking of someone else then. Eric Stokes comes back on a 3-year deal worth $30 million. They signed Matt Gay to a 1-year deal after they decided to part ways with Daniel Carlson in the kicking department. And they signed Jalen Naylor to a 3-year, $35 million deal. They're pretty short at receivers, so they're hoping that he can add to that receiving core over there. And so all these moves, I mean, outside of the linebackers and, of course, Tyler Linderbaum, nothing too flashy there, but just a lot of good depth here, really shoring up some positions of weakness, it feels like.
I'm actually curious on Mike's opinion on Jalen Naylor signing.
I always liked Jalen Naylor in Minnesota. I think he got overshadowed a lot, obviously, given he was behind Justin Jefferson and also Jordan Addison. But when Jalen Naylor was asked to make plays, Jalen Naylor made plays. He's a field stretcher. He's going to make big plays in the passing game. He played with Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, so there's some experience there. And I think Kirk, if he's ultimately not the starting quarterback, can at least impart some wisdom with Mendoza and kind of get those 2 on the same page a little quicker. I think that's kind of an underrated little connection there as well. And, Jalen Naylor, I think he probably got a little overpaid, but wide receivers are kind of getting overpaid everywhere. But he's a guy who I think there's more in the tank than he's shown. He's still a young player. I think there's room for him to grow. And in a receiving room where, I mean, there really is no clear-cut guys in that room.
No.
It's all in front of him to make a big impact this year.
I said it to my dad, and I've said it a few times now, because my dad is also a Raiders fan, that when we signed him, it kind of does remind me of the Jacoby Myers signing. A guy that's kind of just went under the radar, and then the Raiders sign him, and he ends up kind of breaking out. And I'm hoping Jalen Naylor has that similar kind of, growth to him. So
And
we'll see.
I think there's more to Naylor's game than just I think he's a good route runner. He just wasn't given opportunities to run a lot of different routes in Minnesota.
When Justin
Jefferson, Jordan Addison exists.
A lot of his role is just you're on the field to stretch the field, run the go routes and run the nines and get downfield and create some coverage movement from the safeties and that kind of thing. I do want to mention another guy that was signed in this free agency class that I think is a underrated pickup for this running game in Asher Genting. That's Connor Hayward from Pittsburgh, who's kind of a fullback tight end mixture. He's going to play a lot more than I think people realize, whether it's lining up at tight end or lining up, as a true fullback. And he's a really good blocker. Obviously, the brother of Cam Hayward, longtime Pittsburgh Steeler defensive end, and he has a little bit of versatility in his game. He can catch the ball a little bit, but he's a great blocker. He loves to get in there in the run game, and for a team that struggled to run the ball as much as we talked about and has some offensive line issues, having a guy like that as a guy you can put out there as an extra blocker who can still, you can run play action. It's not going to be so predictable where he can't go out and catch a ball, but he's going to play a lot, and I would not be surprised to see some formations where we saw last year a lot of times where they would take Brock Bowers off the field to try and get that, better run blocking presence because Brock Bowers is not really his game. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of Michael Mayer, Connor Hayward kind of double tight end sets this year for the Raiders.
I like that. Yeah, no, for sure.
No, I'd be curious, too, to see if they use him at fullback much. That's something that I know in Genty's college career. He didn't play a lot of I formation or a lot of offset I, and obviously Mendoza hasn't played much under center, so that could be a learning curve, I think, for the Raiders for sure, if that's what they're planning on doing.
Yeah, well, when they signed him, they announced him as a fullback.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that is what they signed him for sure.
He played that way in Pittsburgh, too. I mean, they lined him up in the backfield, and he would block for Pittsburgh's backs last year. But I'll be curious to see, kind of the learning curve there for both Mendoza and Genty, who aren't too familiar with the I and the offset I.
Well, that's what Kirk Cousins is there for.
I do also wonder, too, with Hayward, I think you have the ability to, because he has some pass-catching ability, but he's also a good pass blocker, to use him as kind of a lone running back in certain situations, because Asher Genty's not the best pass blocker in the world.
Right.
And just to spell him a little bit in those spots, because they don't have a ton behind him to begin with.
Or maybe like a third and long back.
Right. So in those kinds of spots, I wouldn't be surprised if they use Hayward as a lone H-back in some of those situations.
So I definitely think that is an interesting signing. Naylor, I'm curious, and just to kind of wrap up the Naylor point, my take on that, I do think this is probably the best opportunity of Jalen Naylor's career. I mean, obviously in Minnesota, he had a lot of talent in front of him. As you mentioned, Mike, this is a wide open room here in Vegas, and really he has all the opportunity in the world to prove himself. As I don't think any of us think he's a number one receiver in the NFL, but he could prove himself to be a number two type of guy on the Raiders here, and I will be curious to see what his development's like over the course of the year. I can tell you, for all your fantasy football players out there, he's a guy I'm going to be looking at in later rounds 100%. If he's sitting there, if you have a 20-round draft, or what's a normal draft, 18 rounds, if he's sitting there in round 14, 15, he's a guy I'd probably take a flyer on.
Someone's got to catch passes, right? Brock Bowers isn't going to catch all the passes. So between Naylor or Trey Tucker, whoever it's going to be, somebody else is going to emerge as a good pass catcher, especially if Mendoza plays to the level which I think a lot of us in this room thinks he can.
So now let's talk about the draft. I'm just going to write down the draft board here, and then we'll break it down a little bit. Obviously, Fernando Mendoza goes number 1 overall. We talked about it on the draft show last week. We'll talk about it more here. Traden Stukes out of Arizona. The safety goes in the 2nd round. In the 3rd round, they take Kayron Crawford out of Auburn at edge rusher. And also in the 3rd round, they take Trey Zoom III out of Texas A&M, listed as a center, but he's 6'7" and 320 pounds. Obviously, Tyler Linderbaum in the room. He's not going to play center if he plays at all. They also got Jared McCoy out of Tennessee at corner, which I really like that pick. Actually, I like Jermod McCoy quite a bit coming out of the draft. They got Mike Washington Jr., a running back out of Arkansas, which I believe, wasn't he the 2nd running back taken or the 3rd running back taken in the draft?
3rd or 4th, but he was ranked on ESPN's as the number 2 running back prospect. But
yeah, I think he was the first non-Notre Dame running back.
Overall?
Oh, no, I was wrong. Third. Yeah.
They also took Dalton Johnson, a safety out of Arizona. Hazaika, I apologize, I know I'm butchering that name. Hazaika Masses out of California, a corner. Malik Benson out of Oregon, a receiver. And Brandon Cleveland out of NC State, a defensive tackle. And so that was their draft there. Obviously, once we get a little bit into the weeds there with some of the deeper picks there, maybe Mike had a guy that stood out to him. Let's focus on these higher picks, though. Let's start with the 2nd round pick, Traden Stukes. This is a guy that I didn't know a lot about coming out of the draft. I actually was pretty well versed in the safeties. And Tyler, I was at your house for the draft. Well, I wasn't there for the 2nd second round. But I know we talked about this pick. I don't think he was a guy that you were terribly versed in either, but I know you've done a lot of research on since. So what's your take on Stukes?
Yeah, I mean, John Spytek the last 2 years, especially in the secondary, has targeted one thing, and that's athleticism. He has gone after guys with speed and just being so versatile. And Stukes is that guy. I don't know, I don't have the time on the top of my head, but a guy that ran like a 4.37, something in that range. So a guy with speed, he's versatile. He can, you can kind of put him anywhere in that the backfield there. So, and it's a need that, I mean, the Raiders need everything on defense. They need everything, and this is a deep safety class. And I've been reading things about how he could have been a first round pick, and kind of is just a perfect fit for what the Raiders are trying to do defensively, at least, and that's get more athletic.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, he ran a 4.33 40. I think he has some versatility to play a little bit of nickel, and a little bit of safety as well. I'd be interested to see with the addition of Teron Johnson from the Buffalo Bills via a trade that we kind of didn't mention yet, but he comes over to what you would suspect to play some nickel for this team. But I think Stukes is going to mix in there. I think Johnson could be a guy that could really teach him well to kind of play in that role in the NFL. So I'll be curious to, especially Stukes is a much better athlete than Teron Johnson has ever dreamt of being. No offense to him. Great guy. I've talked to him a couple of times, over the last year. We've been covering on the Bills beat, but nowhere near the athlete that Stukes is. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of mix and match those two at that nickel spot. But I think Stukes has some versatility, and for a defense that has so many needs, they will find somewhere to get him on the field.
So Crawford and Zune, I don't have a ton to say about either of those guys. If you want to circle back to both those guys, you can in a moment. I'm going to go Jermod McCoy, though, because McCoy was actually the number 2 ranked corner by ESPN going into this draft. He had a lot of injury issues. He tore his ACL last season. But this is a guy that is a very good cover corner, has the prototypical size you look for in a corner, and he can cover all over the field. I think that he slid kind of because of that torn ACL and because of the injuries, but Jermod McCoy, I mean, if he didn't tear that ACL, he was probably going to be an early day 2 guy coming out of the draft, and maybe even a late day 1 guy. So let's kind of get your guys' take on Jermod McCoy. Tyler, if you want to go ahead.
I mean, he slid because there's a concern with the surgery that he has already gotten on his knee. Like, he might need to do another knee surgery, but the outcome of this one could end his career essentially. So there's obviously that's a red flag, and worthy of sliding to the 4th round as he did. But I mean, again, the Raiders have confidence that they have a solution for this and that it's not going to affect his playing career. And if that is the case, I mean, you talked about it. The number 2 ranked cornerback in ESPN should have been a maybe top 15 pick. It's an unbelievable get for the Raiders. If he's healthy and is playing day 1, he's immediately the number 1 corner. And again, you want to talk about linebackers that the Raiders have needed forever. They've needed corners forever too. So if he works out and they have an offseason where they had finally addressed the linebacker position, hopefully, and they hopefully also finally addressed their cornerback needs. So it's a big get for sure.
Yeah, I think it was well worth the price at the first pick of the 4th round that they got him. He was my number 1 cornerback in this draft. If it's not for the injuries, I think he would have been a top 10 pick, maybe even a top 5 pick in this draft overall if he was not injured. Now the questions with the knee, from what I understand, he had the torn ACL and they had to take like a different part of his knee to repair the ACL. Yeah. And they're worried that they may have to go back in and do that again, like a different cartilage or something. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to pretend to be that well-versed in what's happening with Jermod McCoy's knee. But what I do know is he's a damn good football player when he's on the field, and he has good size, good length. He was excellent playing the ball in his time at Tennessee. He's a true lockdown number 1 corner, and if he can stay on the field, this is a heist for the Raiders. I mean, you essentially get 2 of, I would say, the top 10 players in this draft, and you get one of them in the 4th round, and obviously you get the other one at the first pick. But to add him to this secondary, I think there's no downside for the Raiders because their cornerback room, like Tyler said, is, I mean, just absolutely dire in terms of upside long term. So to get him in there and just see what he can do, and if he stays healthy, I mean, we saw Will Johnson kind of go through something similar. I think this is a little worse of an injury situation.
Yeah.
I think the concern with Johnson is like, how many years is his knee going to hold up? Where the issue with McCoy is more like, if we have to go in and have this surgery, he's basically done.
Yeah, right.
So, a little more risk, but I think Jerron McCoy is well worth it. Excellent player.
Especially in the fourth round.
Yeah, I mean, he walks in, he's instantly their number one corner if he's not injured.
Yep.
Especially in the fourth round of a weaker draft, too. Before we kind of go deeper into the Sabres season here, any other takes on any
Sabres?
of the Sabres, the Raiders. Sorry, I got Sabres on my mind here.
too.
Any other takes on the rest of this draft of some of the picks we didn't talk about before we go into the broader scope from either of you?
I'm only going to point this out because I'm a Raiders fan, and it's just it's just something that's on my mind. I like the Malik Benson draft pick in the sixth round. Again, a guy
Is he related to Zach?
No. But again, he's just got that's what John Spytek's been targeting it. He keeps doing it the last 2 years. He's speed. This is a guy that's got a lot of speed. He's got some punt returning ability as well. So I like that pick. I think it's a sneaky good pick. And especially like when Mike was talking about the Jalen Naylor stuff, about how he was kind of like the deep guy to get down the field. The Raiders have plenty of those guys in this offense. So they got Trey Tucker, they got Dante Thornton again that they drafted last year, and now Malik Benson. So they don't need Jalen Naylor to be that guy in this offense with the amount of speed that they got. So I like that pick.
I think Mike Washington was a terrible pick.
Yeah.
Okay. Mike hates running backs, by the way. It doesn't matter what round you take them. If you could draft a running back with the last pick of the draft, Mike Rose would hate it.
Because here's the thing. Mike Washington has like one of the worst analytical profiles for a running back like in the draft in decades. One of his top analytical comps is actually Josh Hokett, which if you don't know who that is, he's a UFC fighter.
I don't know who that is.
I think he's fighting at the White House card.
Okay.
Like that's what Josh Hokett's up to. And Mike Washington, if you look at he ended up going in the fourth round, so that helps a little bit. But comparing him to day one and day two running backs, where he was initially projected to go over the last 12 years, he was 12th percentile for career yards after contact per attempt. He was last in career missed tackles forced per touch, and by career scheduled adjusted yards per carry, he was also last. And for all drafted running backs in those categories, he was 19th percentile, 6th percentile, and 9th percentile. So he's basically like as bad as it gets in terms of a profile. He's just not a very good football player, unfortunately, is kind of what it comes down to. So I think as good a value as Jerron McCoy was in the early fourth round, I think Mike Washington is equally as bad a pick late in the fourth round. I'm not anti-running back. We'll find a running back somewhere.
Someday, maybe.
Somewhere over the course of this, I promise that I will talk highly of, but Mike Washington's not going to be that guy.
All right, so we kind of got our draft breakdown here. Now we're going to go into the season breakdown. I'll go first with mine for the Raiders here. So here's where I'm at with the Las Vegas Raiders this year. They finished fourth in the division last year. Realistically, I think they finished fourth in the division again this year. I do think they improved quite a bit. I expect my expectations for them. I expect this defense to go from really not good whatsoever outside of Max Crosby to a low mid-tier defense. I don't think they made enough moves where this is going to be a top 10 defense. I don't even think I'd go as far to say a top 15 defense. Somewhere in that 20-ish range,
They're not the Arizona Cardinals.
Well, I was about to say, P has them losing to the Arizona Cardinals.
Yes,
you did have that.
I do think that. I think we'll get to that, but I think they'll be about a top 20-ish defense somewhere in that range. Offensively, on that side of the ball, I think they're gonna be able to run the ball a lot better with all the changes they made on the offensive line this year. You talk about Connor Hayward, obviously Ashton Genty last year. I think there was like 1 point halfway through the season where he had like 3 yards after contact for his total 300 yards or something like that. It was ridiculous. He just was not getting holes whatsoever. I expect they're gonna be able to run the ball a little bit more. In terms of passing, my expectations aren't high. You got Brock Bowers. We talked about Jalen Naylor. You got the rookie quarterback Fernando Mendoza, which will have everyone say when they think Fernando Mendoza is going to start when it gets to your turn. I think he's going to start probably like game 3 or 4, somewhere in there. I think they give Kirk Cousins like a pair of starts to start the year before turning the keys over to Fernando Mendoza. I think he probably starts around early October, late September. And when that does happen, I don't necessarily think that Fernando Mendoza has a sensational rookie year. I think it's probably very average, somewhere, maybe if he starts 13 games, maybe he's throwing like 12 touchdowns and 6 interceptions or something like that. I don't think it's anything remarkable. I just don't think there's enough weapons in Vegas. I don't think he's, we talked about we really like his intelligence. I don't think he's going to light the world on fire, though, with this roster. So my point being is I think they're going to struggle to pass the ball with Fernando Mendoza for his rookie year, too, just the weapons they have in place. But I do think they'll run the ball good. I think the defense will be middling. I think the Raiders probably finish around somewhere between 6 and 8 wins, I think, realistically. I think they're probably a mid-tier team, and I think they can be frisky in a lot of games. Turn it over to Mike.
Yeah, I'm pretty bullish on the Raiders, if I'm being honest. I think they could finish as high as second in this division.
Okay.
I think Fernando Mendoza should start week 1. He probably won't start till like week 3 or 4 because we have to do this weird thing where they got to learn the ropes. Like sitting those 2 games does anything for them. But I think the defense is much improved with the guys they added. I think Quay Walker and Nakobe Dean are major stabilizers to that defense at that linebacker spot. I think Kwity Paye gives a little more juice for the pass rush alongside Max Crosby, who is still there despite being traded and then ending up back on the team. And I think if Jermon McCoy is able to get on the field this year and contribute, like that defense should be much improved. I like Trey Tucker. I like Jalen Naylor. I think, if they could find a third guy to play some snaps, I don't know who that guy is. I'm not really high on Dante Thornton or Jack Besh or any of those guys. But, if they can find a third guy or just run a lot of 2 tight ends, because I think Michael Meyer, and Brock Bowers are both really talented tight end pass catchers. And I think Asher Genty's special with the running back spot. There you go. Nice thing Mike said about a running back.
Hey, we got one.
And no, they shouldn't have drafted him last year, but he's special at the running back spot. So I think they could compete for a playoff spot this year. I really do. And I don't think this division is exactly murderer's row this year. I think we'll get to some of the other teams, but I think there could be some teams in this division that struggle this year. So I think the Raiders could have a pretty good year. Would I pick them to make the playoffs if you asked me today? I would say no. But would it surprise me if they did? Also no. I think they definitely can be in the mix down to the last week of the season. And I think Fernando Mendoza is your offensive rookie of the year.
All right.
Trey Tucker, you mentioned Trey Tucker. I think Trey Tucker is really underrated in this offense. There was a lot of moments last year where he showed flashes of being like, a legit option in this offense. So I like Trey Tucker, but for me, with the Raiders, I am not getting my hopes up. I've done this way too many times. I would like to be a guy.
You did it last year, I want to point out. You were excited about the Geno Smith, Pete Carroll offense week 1.
I did. I also was a believer in Chip Kelly going into the season, so how did that work out? But I don't want to get my hopes up. I'm not going to be like, I think we can make the playoffs. I think we can compete. I'm not doing that this year. I also don't want – I'm completely okay. I was okay with us trading Max Crosby, grabbing those draft picks, and just full reset, take our time, especially in this wide receiver class, this / quarterback class upcoming, where if you are, let's say the Raiders somehow work their way to the number 1 or number 2 overall pick, that is going to be a very valuable draft pick to trade up for because the Raiders got their guy.
Or you could just solve your wide receiver problem.
Or you just take Jeremiah Smith.
That's true.
That's an option.
That's true, but especially if they go number 1, I'm just saying, you're not taking Jeremiah Smith number 1. You could.
Why not?
If there was ever a receiver.
Listen, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at, though.
Can you give me a reason why not?
Listen, that is what I'm getting at, though. I do want Jeremiah Smith so bad. Cam Coleman, all these guys in this wide receiver class upcoming are going to be very valuable to this offense. So I am completely okay with not rushing things and taking our time, which is, again, why I'm okay with the Raiders starting Kirk Cousins and sitting Mendoza as long as possible. I do agree with you that I don't like the whole 2-3 weeks thing. Sit him.
Nothing.
It really doesn't make any sense.
I don't like that either. I mean, again, Tom Brady has said on so many different podcasts and interviews about the value of sitting quarterbacks. John Spytek said it at the draft combine. Clint Kubiak also said it. All 3 of them seem to be in lockstep on that. So for me, I don't think there's any doubt Kirk Cousins is starting the season. It's when he comes.
Well, let me say to Mike Rose's point, too, though, a little bit. I think me and Mike are on the same page. He's going to start week 3 or 4. They're going to say this, and then they're going to lose the first 3 games, and then some asses are going to be on fire, and they're going to have to start them.
And there's just no reason for it.
I think it's almost detrimental because you're not giving him them first team snaps the entire offseason, the first 3 weeks. Then you just throw him into the fire. Probably would have just been better off if you just started him from the get-go and gave him those first team snaps the whole time.
Just make it an open quarterback competition. He will win. I mean, it's as simple as that. He's better than Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
So if you just make it a quarterback competition, he's going to be the starter.
Yeah, I don't know. If he starts week 1, I'm not going to be sitting in this room how could they do this? And if he starts week 1,
the job to Michael Penix.
He did.
He did. But I don't care. I really don't. I don't think they can make a wrong decision here. Is really what I'm getting at. And
that's not true.
as far as
starting Kirk Cousins is the wrong decision. I want it on the record.
I just don't agree. I just don't agree.
I want it on the record.
I think it's okay with being patient here, and especially with this roster, I just don't like. Mike says that he thinks they can compete for a playoff spot. Sure, I don't know. I don't know if I actually agree with that, but maybe we'll see. I'm gonna go. I'll agree with Pete on this one. 6 wins, sure.
Give me Fernando Mendoza week 1.
Now, I want to say, too, I completely agree with Mike that whether he starts week 1 or week 4, I think Fernando Mendoza wins Rookie of the Year just because, number one, you don't have to do anything sensational as a rookie quarterback to win Rookie of the Year. Like, if he starts and they win 6 games
not going
and he has
with
average
Jeremiah
stats,
Love?
They don't give it to running backs. They love giving it to quarterbacks.
I can't believe
they love giving it to quarterbacks. That's not like a based on merit prediction from me. That's a based on trends that I understand. I just know that if Fernando Mendoza does anything like respectable, he will win the Rookie of the Year award. But Jeremiah Love will deserve it because he's going to rush for 2,000 yards. I don't actually mean that. we're going to wrap up here, though, on the Raiders. We've gone a half hour on the Raiders. So we're going to take a quick timeout, regroup, and we're going to come back with a team that's going to be looking to get back on track after a down year, the Kansas City Chiefs. Stay tuned.
Turn up your volume and join the team. Things are about to get started. It's 1st and 15.
When you walk into a home in Batavia, there's a good chance a piece of Max Pies furniture is part of that history. For over a century, they've been there, helping families furnish first apartments, first homes, and everything after that. Not a website, not a warehouse across the country, right here, local, family-owned. And right now, more than ever, local matters. If you've ever thought about stopping in, this is your moment. Max Pies Furniture, still here, still family, still Batavia, still where our customers send their friends.
And welcome back to 1st and 15. Pete Zehler of WBTA alongside the Batavia Daily News' Mike Rose and WBTA's NFL analyst Tylor Klien. So we're going to get into the Kansas City Chiefs now, a team that went to 3 straight Super Bowls, won 2 of them, and then last year the wheels kind of fell off the bus. So their last year of going to the Super Bowl, I forget what it was. I think they won like 14 one-score games or something ridiculous like that. And they obviously got dominated in the Super Bowl against the Eagles. Last season, they lost all of those one-score games, and it kind of just flipped the absolute opposite way for them. Pat Mahomes gets a bad knee injury at the end of the year. Like, it was just a complete unraveling of the Chiefs towards the end of last season. Starting with free agency, I'm just going to go down through their free agency because there's not a ton here, so we will break it down as a whole. The biggest one we're going to talk about is they did sign Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker III to a 3-year deal worth $43 million. That's big money for the Super Bowl MVP. Kind of in a surprising move, I would say. They brought back Travis Kelce, who I think everyone pretty much thought he was going to retire after last season. It really seemed to be trending that way.
Wait, you were surprised by that?
I was. I really thought he was done.
He was not.
He looked like he was out of gas. I thought he was going to go friggin' chill with Taylor Swift and do whatever the hell they do. But he did re-sign to a 1-year, $12 million deal. They signed the former Ravens safety Alohi Gilman to a 3-year, $24.7 million deal. They signed Kyrus Tonga to a 3-year, $21 million deal. They signed Miami Dolphins quarterback Kader Kohou to a 1-year deal. They brought back Tyquan Thornton for a 2-year, $11 million deal, which it is a little concerning for the Chiefs that this article says the Chiefs are bringing back their best wide receiver, Tyquan Thornton, which I don't know if I agree with that necessarily.
Was that wrong last year? Who was better than him?
And I would say Rashee Rice in the limited sample size he played.
He just didn't play enough.
But yeah, so that's what they did in free agency, at least what I have in front of me. And so obviously the big one there, Kenneth Walker III. Mike, do we have a running back move you like here?
No, this is terrible. Why are we paying this guy so much money? For what, exactly? I mean, yeah, I'm out on signing Kenneth Walker. I think we mentioned it a couple weeks ago. He made all of his money in the Super Bowl.
I need to get a tracker on the show that's like a tally of the wide receiver moves Mike's likes. And it's gonna right now it'd be like 1 for 5.
Yeah, I'm out on running backs pretty universally. Now, moves I do like. I do like Alohi Gilman coming in the secondary for Kansas City. I think Kyrus Tonga's a really nice pickup. Really good run stuffer in the middle for New England, and he should come in and fill a similar role for the Chiefs. I mean, I think they almost had to bring back Tyquan Thornton because we'll get to this wide receiver room. I'm very out on the weapons on this offense.
I agree with you on Tonga. He was kind of like the unsung hero of the Patriots last year, on that defensive line.
We don't give love to the big guys who eat up blocks in the middle of defenses, but Kyrus Tonga is one of the best in the business at that. And he will come in, and we'll get to their draft. I think they drafted a similar guy to eat up some blocks in the middle for them with one of their first-round picks this year. So they also brought in Kyer Elam, who I think Buffalo Bills fans who may be listening will be pretty familiar with, the former Bills first-round pick. Now, here's my issue with Kyer Elam. He may have to play for the Chiefs, which would be really bad.
Yeah, no, he was bad for Buffalo. He was bad when he went to Dallas for the limited time he went last year.
They gutted this secondary.
This is what I don't understand about guys like this, like Kyer Elam. You're telling me that out of like the thousands of free agent guys that never made it in college, there's not one guy out there that's a better option than Kyer Elam?
There's plenty.
There has to be.
Draft capital matters. This is true. It will always be true. Where you get drafted matters, and it doesn't just matter to the team that drafts you. It doesn't just matter for like a year. It matters forever in the NFL. It's one of the more ridiculous things that, in my opinion anyways, but you can prove to be a much better player than a first-round pick as a sixth-round pick, and the first-round pick will still get every opportunity to succeed over the sixth-round pick.
Well, we were kind of talking about a player off air that might fit that bill. With Justin Fields.
Yeah. Justin Fields on this Chiefs team now as the backup quarterback, and we could talk about him when we get to the outlook for this season, but how he continues to get like legitimately quality opportunities in the NFL is mind-boggling to me. So the free agency, there was some good, there was some bad. I like Gilman, I like Tonga, I think Thornton was a good guy to bring back, but Kenneth Walker, I think they gave too much money to. And
so wait, before we get
Travis
to Tylor
Kelce
here,
also.
Travis Kelce, that's what I was going to say too. Does Travis Kelce, deciding him back, actually make them any better? I mean, it's obviously not going to make them any better, but do you think it's a positive? Because in my opinion, I think it's a negative. I think Travis Kelce is pretty out of gas. He's like 37 years old. Last year, he really finally he had been fine up until last year, but last year he started to look his age. It just looked like Pat Mahomes was trying to force balls to him a lot, and I think he was a great player. He's a Hall of Famer, top 5 tight end of all time, no question about it. But I just think he's out of gas at this point, and I just don't think that. I think it almost is a net negative having him come back for another year.
David Njoku signed with the Chargers, who we'll talk about later in the show, for less money than Travis Kelce's getting paid, and David Njoku's a better player than Travis Kelce at this point. So there was better options that the Chiefs I think would have explored if he did ultimately decide to retire, and you can't. He's going to have his number retired in Kansas City one day. If he wants to continue to play, they're going to continue to employ him. But
you wish it would have done a little cheaper.
Well, and that's the problem, too. You're not going to get these guys cheaper, right? Like Travis Kelce's going to get his money. There was a certain number that he was always going to get, and they were going to give it to him. So it's just one of those things where you're kind of backed into a corner almost, so to speak, with a guy like that. It's almost like, to make a basketball comparison, like the Lakers with Kobe Bryant at the end of his career. Yeah. The late, great Kobe Bryant. But he was clearly kind of out of a window where he could be the best player on a championship team, but was still getting maximum contracts in the NBA, and the Lakers were terrible because of it. But it was just one of those things where it's like, you're not going to run Kobe Bryant out of Los Angeles, so what do you do? The Chiefs are kind of in a similar situation with Travis Kelce. You're going to have to continue to pay him and employ him if he wants to play. And so he's on the books for $12 million that there probably was cheaper and better options available. I
mean, I don't think it hurts them. You said Travis Kelce was kind of forced the ball a lot last year. I mean, I don't blame that. I mean, how bad that wide receiver room is. Yeah. Listen, if Rashid Rice can get his stuff together and stay on the field, he's very, very good. He's proven that. The Chiefs need that very badly. I don't know. I think this offense still. I'm never going to doubt Pat Mahomes. He's proven that you should never doubt Pat Mahomes. This offensive line is really good. I mean, we talked about Tyler Linderbaum being, maybe the best center in football. I think Creed Humphrey might be actually the best center in football. So they got, I mean, Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes, this offensive line, I won't be surprised with anything they do. But again, Pat Mahomes is coming off a very bad injury, which I was trying to figure out what game that was. That was a Chargers game, right?
I mean, he was basically hurt.
I think that was the game they had to win or get eliminated, and it happened right at the end of the game, too. It's like when they make the Pat Mahomes movie, that's going to be a dramatic scene in the movie.
It was the Chargers game, December 14th, and before that, they had lost 2 games. This was a team that just was trending towards kind of this bad ending to the season. I mean, losing Pat Mahomes, is the reason why they ended up not winning a game for the rest of the season, but I don't think any of us – did any of you guys think the Chiefs were going to make the playoffs before that injury? Yeah.
No,
I
was
refuse to
completely-
count them out until they lost just because of their history. I put respect on their history, but I didn't think they were a real threat. Just, it's kind of like that Tom Brady lure when he was on the Patriots. You just never really wanted to count them out until they were officially out.
I think we overestimate this history fact. Like, you're only good as what you've done for me lately. They were bad all year. And the reality is the year before that, they made the Super Bowl. I understand that, but they were kind of fluky for a lot of the year. We're winning, miracle games. I mean, they weren't just winning one-score games. They were like guys forgetting how to carry a football and dropping it on the ground and shanking field goals and all kinds of ridiculous stuff to allow them to go on the run that they did. So I just feel like they'd been kind of trending down for a couple of years at that point, and it was just one of those things where it kind of cratered, I think, a little more rapidly than people were ready for. But if you paid attention, I feel like the signs were there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I don't know how much Kenneth Walker really changes anything
Nothing.
offensively. So,
Running backs don't help you win games.
I think it's better than what they had,
don't.
no question about it. It's better than what they had.
Kareem Hunt was the best short yardage running back in the NFL last year. Kenneth Walker got taken out of the games by Seattle in short yardage. So that could be an issue because Kansas City, they're like 3rd-and-1 merchants. Andy Reid, for whatever reason, puts his team in 3rd-and-1 more than anybody I've ever seen.
Well,
and so, I don't know.
Well, first, two things. We'll get back to this when we go in the outlook of the team a little bit, but they do have Amari DiMercato now, too, who
cannot run between the tackles at all. They have nobody. Kareem Hunt will probably end up on this roster before it's all said and done because they don't have anyone who can get tough yards on this team right now.
If you're one of our 2 fans out there, you know for a fact that Mike Rose is a huge Amari DiMercato guy.
Amari DiMercato is a player in the NFL. He went to TCU. I do know that.
But
just not he probably Arizona. I'm surprised they didn't keep him since they love their running back so much. I can't believe they let one go.
So let's talk about the draft a little bit now. They draft Mansour Delane in the first round, traded up to get Mansour Delane, and it was kind of a controversial, I wouldn't say controversial move, but just some people question it, I think, in the weak draft like that. If he's your guy, go and get him. They got Peter Woods, the defensive tackle out of Clemson, later in that same first round. Second round, they go get R. Mason Thomas out of Oklahoma, an edge rusher. They get Jaden Kennedy out of Oregon, a safety. They get Emmett Johnson, another running back in the 5th round. I'm sure Mike hates that pick. They get Cyrus Allen out of Cincinnati, a receiver, and they get Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU, a quarterback. All right, quick off topic. We're going to go on a little bit of our off-topic paths like we do sometimes here. If Pat Mahomes isn't back, who should start week 1? Justin Fields or Garrett Nussmeier? I knew you were going to go with Garrett Nussmeier.
Why would you ever choose? Why would you make an active decision to put Justin Fields on a football field as your starting quarterback?
Tyler,
it's never a good idea.
Tyler, where are you at on it?
I agree with Mike.
You're on the Garrett Nussmeier wagon too?
Yeah. Get me on the Nuss bus.
I'm going with Justin Fields. Start him week 1. I don't know if I.
So you want to run the option?
Yes.
You might as well start Kenneth Walker at quarterback. What difference does it make?
I like that nickname, the Nuss Bus.
The Nuss Bus.
All aboard the Nuss Bus. Baby.
I like that.
All right, I had to go there because I knew Mike Rose. I just gave him like the alley-oop for that one. I knew it was happening there. The rest of this draft, though, let's talk about it a little bit. Obviously, they take Mansour Delane early. That was a need for them after that they lost some guys in the offseason. They weren't the greatest in the secondary last year. They trade up. They get their guy in Delane.
Yeah, so they basically sent their whole secondary to the Rams. They trade Trent McDuffie. They get a second first-round pick in this draft. And then they also let Jalen Watson go, and he signs with the Rams. We talked about that on last week's episode. If you didn't listen to that, you should go do that. But Mansour Delane, I think the trade-up was pretty foolish by Kansas City. I think he probably would have been there at 9 where they initially were slated to pick. But they move up. They get their guy. They didn't give up a ton. So I think it's a fine move. I think Delane, he was my number 2 cornerback in this class, number 1 given the issues to Jermon McCoy, which we talked about already. Again, kind of similar build to McCoy, good physical corner. He can play up on the line of scrimmage. He's an outside guy. He's going to be able to come in and kind of be their number 1 corner, I think, immediately in Kansas City, and they need one after the offseason maneuvers in their secondary.
All right, so let's talk about the other first-round pick, Peter Woods out of Clemson. This is a pick that I really like, and I think Mike likes him too quite a bit. Woods is a guy, he's listed as a defensive tackle, but he can play on the edge if you need him to play on the edge. He can line up as a tackle. Obviously, everyone knows that Chris Jones probably going to retire pretty soon, probably at the end of this year. At this point, if you were asking me, do you think Chris Jones is going to retire after this season, I'd probably say yes. I probably have guessed after last season too. So Woods is the natural replacement for Chris Jones. This is just a guy that has all the physical physical attributes you can ask for, and I really think it was kind of a steal getting him that late in the first round like the Kansas City Chiefs did. He'll be a day one starter for him. He'll come in, play right away, and I think he has some, especially in this defense, he has some potential to be a star player for the Chiefs moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, this was a guy that I like the Raiders to maybe look at if he fell to the second round for them. I think Bills fans were also interested in this guy as well. So I think, I unfortunately, I like this pick for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I like, Mike said it, he likes their draft. I like this draft. I mean, Kansas City's offense, their front office has done a very good job of constantly putting guys around Pat Mahomes and filling him in and getting him opportunities to get to the playoffs every year. So I like this draft.
Yeah, I think the draft was a home run. I think Woods is a really good pick for them. The biggest concern with him is maybe a little shorter arms than you would like. But overall, a guy who is going to come in and be able to play the run immediately and has some upside as a pass rusher. And, he's a good athlete, physical guy. I think he can come in and, eventually replace Chris Jones. And now you have Tonga in there to kind of be, that natural run stopper. I like what they're doing in the interior of the defensive line there.
We also can't forget that this pick was acquired from the Rams and, in the Trent McDuffie deal that we talked again in the last episode, as Mike mentioned. So I thought it was a good use of this draft pick here.
And I know, Pete, you mentioned, he's coming to be a day one starter. I think the benefit they have is he doesn't have to be with the guys they have there already.
I think he's talented enough where he could be, though.
He's absolutely talented enough to play and start if they needed him to, if guys get banged up or whatever it may be. And they're going to mix him in a lot, but he doesn't have to come in and be, a superstar in his rookie season, which I think is a big benefit to him to allow him to really, kind of adequate himself a little bit.
Yeah, you can certainly learn a lot from Chris Jones, I'm sure, too, which big benefit there. Let's talk about their second-round pick, the guy they took 8th in the second round, Mason Thomas out of Oklahoma. Mike, I know you're a fan of Oklahoma football and the college football ranks, so tell us what you know about Mason Thomas.
I love our Mason Thomas. He is an elite pass rusher. He was first-team All-SEC last year. He is a very, very top-end athlete off the edge. He can really get after the quarterback as kind of that pure speed edge rusher. I think he can come in and be a guy who Kansas City uses pretty immediately as a pass rusher right away. But he also has the ability to play the run. He's a better run defender than I think he gets credit for. And I think he eventually is a guy who can develop into a 3-down player for the Chiefs defensively. And again, another piece up front for them. I really like what they've done on the defensive line. I thought our Mason Thomas was a guy that the Bills would look at. They opted to go with T.J. Parker, obviously, a couple picks prior to where our Mason Thomas gets selected. And I think our Mason Thomas is his speed is something that the Bills don't really have on their defensive line, and that's why I thought it might be a good fit. But he's gonna have some plays this year that he's just gonna beat a guy off the ball and get a sack. And he's also a big game player. In his time at Oklahoma, in the big moments, he always stepped up. I don't remember specifically what game, but I do remember he was suspended for the first half of the game from targeting last season, came back in the second half, in the first play of the third quarter, he came on the field and got a sack. So he's the kind of guy, his impact can be felt immediately when he's on the field, and I think he will be an instant impact as a rookie for Kansas City.
All right, do you guys have any takes on any of the other picks in this draft? I'll just say I think Garrett Nussmeier is like the poor man's Fernando Mendoza. Like, Garrett Nussmeier is like if you took all the mental and emotional attributes I like about Fernando Mendoza away and just left him as like the raw, accurate quarterback. So that's really the only take I have out of any of these other picks. So do you guys have anything?
Brian Kelly should be jailed for the crimes he committed to LSU guys' draft stocks over the last couple of years.
Nussmeier was talking about his first-round pick.
This guy, he was going to be the number one overall pick at the start of the year. He went 33rd pick in the 7th round. I mean, it is crazy.
He was almost Mr. Irrelevant.
It is crazy the fall he made. But listen, I mean, if you're Kansas City, you hope he never has to play, right? But
yeah.
I think you can never go wrong drafting a quarterback in a spot where there's very little pressure to have the guy develop. Because if he develops, great. You have either a quality backup or you can trade him for much higher draft capital.
He does strike me as like an NFL backup quarterback. He does strike me as like that guy that's going to float around in the league and just be backups on teams for the next decade.
And let's not forget either. This going into last season, he was a potential Heisman guy, potential first-round pick. That was all there. And he was kind of just injured all last year in college, and LSU just underperformed
And
very,
Brian
very
Kelly
much.
should be jailed.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, though,
in the 7th round, this is a great draft pick.
before we go too deep on that, though, I just want to say, when he was projected to be the number 1 overall pick, I did not like him.
I was not on the Nuss bus then.
I've been on the Nuss bus.
Okay.
I like Garrett Nussmeier. I was stunned to see him go this late in the draft. I remember sitting there on day 3 of the draft in the Bills media room and just watching the fall and just watching like some of the guys that were getting drafted in front of him, and I was just stunned. I mean, I was beside myself. It was not good last year. Don't get me wrong. The tape was awful. But if you go back and watch his 2024 tape, which I don't know if you guys, we all watched the draft. I felt like every guy that was getting picked, no matter what round it was, they were like, if you watch the 2024 tape, this guy really flashed.
Except Garrett Nussmeier.
Well, Garrett Nussmeier really flashed in 2024. So if the draft was so bad that everyone had to go back to tape from 2 years ago, I don't see how this guy lasted to the 7th round.
All right, so let's talk about the Chiefs season now that we've gone down. We've taken a ride on the Nuss bus. It's dropped us off here on the corner of Main and Center. And we are going to talk a little bit about our predictions for the Kansas City Chiefs this year. I'll start out. And so here's my take on the Chiefs. Offensively, I think it's a good team this year. Now, I will let me note this by saying that everything I say is dependent on Pat Mahomes missing no more than 2 weeks. Everything I say is absolutely dependent. If Pat Mahomes misses a month, throw what I'm saying right out the window. But realistically, I think offensively, first off, I want to say I like Noah Gray as a tight end. I don't know how much they're going to mix him in this year, but if they do mix him in, he takes some snaps away from Travis Kelce. I think he could be a big factor there. Unlike Mike Rose, I do like the Kenneth Walker move, not for the money they gave him. I would never have given him that much money. I completely agree with Mike on that aspect of it. But I do think as a player, he's a big upgrade in terms of lengthening out the field a little, being able to run the ball down the field. Kareem Hunt was great when he got down to the red zone, but I think that Kenneth Walker will help them get to the red zone a little bit more. They have another running back that I really like that I've been stocking up in a lot of my dynasty leagues, in Brashard Smith. I think he's a really good receiving back. I think he can be a good third down back for them. I'm not saying this is like a game breaker move right there, but I do like their running back room. This is a team, too, that the receiver room, I agree with Tyler, if Rashee Rice can just, get his head out of his ass and not get injured quite as much. He's an elite receiver, by all means. And the injuries are, it's not all just been him being an idiot. I mean, the injuries have been a real thing. So if he can stay healthy and not do anything silly, absolutely, he's a true number 1 receiver in the NFL. Xavier Worthy has obviously been pretty disappointing, I'd say, for where they took him and what he's done up to this point, which, by the way, just a little side rant here, but it's so funny. I hear Bills fans all the time, like, they get pissed. They're like, oh my God, we gave the Chiefs the pick, and they just went and took Xavier Worthy. I'm always like, what has Xavier Worthy done? Like, yeah, you're mad we got Keon Coleman, and I get it. I don't like Keon Coleman. He's done nothing, but Xavier Worthy has also done absolutely nothing.
Maybe if either of the teams were smart, they would have drafted Lad McConkey, who was better than both of them in college and is better than both of them as pros.
Yeah, no, I hate when Bills fans try to tell me that, like, oh my God, we got Keon Coleman and they got Xavier Worthy. I'm like, right now they're about like a net neutral, especially if you point out that Worthy was the guy taken higher. It's pretty neutral. But either way, I mean, he is an explosive player, and if he can, maybe get a little bit more on the same page with Pat Mahomes, he is an intriguing guy to have in the slot. Their line is always pretty decent in Kansas City. So offensively, if Pat Mahomes misses no more than 2 games, I think they're a better offensive team this year from the moves they made in the offseason. I think their running back room is significantly better. I do think that if Rashee Rice can actually get a full offseason, that improves the receiver room quite a bit there. On the defensive side of the ball, their secondary probably takes a step back with the guys they lost. I mean, if Delane can come in day 1 and be, a quality starter, that will certainly change things a little bit. But I would say that their secondary probably takes a step back. However, I don't think their defensive line's skipping a beat. They're mostly bringing everyone back. We talk about Peter Wood they're bringing in. We talk about Mason they're bringing in. I mean, this is a defensive line that I think could have improved a little bit. And this is just a team that the pedigree's there. They know what it takes to win football games. Andy Reid knows what it takes to win football games. I know Mike's going to tell me, well, what have they done for me lately? You look at Andy Reid's career. This man has done nothing his entire football career but win football games and get teams to the playoffs. I think that next year this team will absolutely be a factor in the AFC West. I think they're going to – right now, if Pat Mahomes misses no more than 2 games, I say they're an 11-12 win team. They're an 11-12 win team right now. At preseason prediction, I think they finished 2nd in the AFC West this season, and I really like them to get back to the playoffs and be a factor. They're going to be there. They're going to be in the mix, and you're going to have to play the Kansas City Chiefs in January again, and it's going to be a problem, whoever wants to take it next.
Okay. Again, this team is completely reliant on Pat Mahomes. That's obvious.
Yes.
According to Yahoo Sports, though, there is optimism for a Week 1 return, but it's still up in the air. So there is no guarantees that he'll be back Week 1. There's no really. We don't know for sure where he's going to come back into the season. Whether it's Week 1, 2, 3, who knows? But again, I said it earlier. Rashid Rice is very, very important to this offense. He just needs a training camp. He needs a full just preseason of being on a football field and no other distractions and just no suspensions, none of that. This offense needs him very, very badly because this wide receiver room is very bad. Travis Kelce is your best option other than Rashid Rice when he's out there, and he's an aging tight end who, like Pete said, is kind of showing flashes of why is this guy still in the NFL? But he is a reliable target. He's a comfort blanket for Pat Mahomes. He knows the offense well. He does all those things. He's a very smart football player. So I still do think he adds value to this team. This offensive line's very good. We've talked about the Kenneth Walker signing. What does this do for this offense? I don't know. He's better than Isaiah Pacheco, and there's no doubt about that. Was he worth the money? Again, I don't know. I mean, I think we talked about it last episode about how the Super Bowl was pretty much the reason why Kenneth Walker was paid that much money. And so we'll see. I will never, ever doubt Pat Mahomes. I will keep saying I will never doubt Pat Mahomes. This defense, on the other hand, not that high on. The defensive line looks good. The linebacker core is all right. They got Nick Bolton there. The secondary, I think, will be tough. It's young. It doesn't have a lot of experience there. And this is a tough division. I mean, Mike talked about the Raiders being maybe a feisty team. The Chargers got a good offense. The Broncos got a good offense. So it's gonna be a hard year. I mean, I said it too. Before that injury with Pat Mahomes, this team was kind of trending downwards. And I don't know if the Kenneth Walker signing really changes that much. Again, it's health, and that's really all it comes down to: Pat Mahomes and health.
So where are you on wins wise for them next year?
I don't know. It's where is Pat Mahomes?
If Pat Mahomes is healthy,
if there's a full season of Pat Mahomes, I think they can finish second in this division.
Okay.
All right, I wanted to go last because I have a lot to say about this team. Let's start with the good because there was some good. I love their draft. I think they're great up front. They got rid of Juwan Taylor, which is a huge, huge win because the guy got penalized more than he actually blocked the person in front of him. But there's a lot of bad. The secondary is really young and really inexperienced. They lost a lot of talent in that secondary. This wide receiver room is among the worst in professional football, in my opinion. Outside of Rashid Rice, I mean, you just basically have fast guys who have no ability to run routes or do anything productive on the football field.
That's exactly what they do.
They have Worthy, they have Tyquan Thornton, they have Jalen Royals. None of these guys are NFL wide receivers. They got Jeff Caldwell as an unsigned free agent who's 6'5" and ran a 4.2 40 and whatever. They just have a bunch of fast guys who are not very good NFL wide receivers. Their left tackle spent half the year randomly missing last year in Josh Simmons. Hopefully we're not going to have any issues with him this year, but who knows what's going on with that. They got Travis Kelce, who's 38 years old. Their quarterback's coming off a torn ACL. Their backup quarterback is the worst quarterback still employed in professional football. So there's a lot not to like. They also, it's been confirmed, they opened the year with the Denver Broncos in Kansas City. If Patrick Mahomes is not ready for that game, they have zero chance of beating the Denver Broncos. Justin Fields couldn't beat that defense if he was allowed to play with 14 guys against 11.
I mean, Justin Fields almost beat that defense last year. The game was 11-10 or something.
And he didn't. He was so bad. His defense did such a good job, and he still couldn't win that game. That is how bad he is. So I just look at this team. I think the range of outcomes is huge. I think they could finish as high as second, but I think they could finish as low as fourth in this division. I think they could win 12 or 13 games because, no one's a bigger Patrick Mahomes guy than I am.
Yeah, let's actually talk about that real quick. Back on our show at GCC, Mike Rose was ahead of the Pat Mahomes hype before anybody else was.
I was don't doubt Pat Mahomes before that was even a thing.
Yeah, so to set the scene, it was 7 years ago. It was before Pat Mahomes was starting his first season in Kansas City. I want to say we were all a little down on the Chiefs in our show, saying yeah, this guy he played in the Big 12. He sat for a year in the NFL. I don't really know what he's going to do in the NFL. I don't think me, Tyler, or anyone else on the show was that high on the Chiefs that year.
I think it was just us three.
Yeah, I think we had a couple. I don't remember. It's besides the point. But Mike Rose comes in and he says, I've been reading a lot about Pat Mahomes in the offseason. I watched him play against Oklahoma. I watched a lot of Big 12 football. I think he is going to be a dark horse for the MVP this year. And we were like, you're an idiot, Mike.
I also said he was going to break the NFL record for passing touchdowns.
He did
he
say
got
that.
damn close.
He did say
he
that.
got through 50.
He got within 5. So, Mike, you can go back to your point, but we just had to, verify that you are indeed a Pat Mahomes truther from day one.
I am as big a Patrick Mahomes guy as there is. But, A, I think he's regressed a little bit the last couple of years.
I wouldn't disagree.
As a passer. And B, I just don't think this team's very good. So I think they could finish as high as second. I think they could win 12 or 13 games and be a playoff team. Do I think they can make a run to the Super Bowl? No. I also wouldn't be surprised if they finish last in this division and win, 5 games, and it all just comes cratering down. There's a lot of variables. They're relying on a lot of older players and injured players.
They do have a very wide area.
Huge
They could be
range of outcomes.
Yeah, they could be the best team in the division, and they could absolutely be the worst team in the division.
I mean, it's a massive range of outcomes. And obviously, if Patrick Mahomes isn't playing, they're going to win one game because Justin Fields is abysmal. Garrett Nussmeier will probably start more games than Justin Fields.
I want to say that I think if Pat Mahomes plays, I don't think their basement is as low as we're saying right now.
I agree. I absolutely think it can be.
But he played last year.
This wide receiver room's really bad. Their secondary's not good.
I understand they lost out at the end of the year when he wasn't playing.
I think they were like a 7-win team when he played.
They were already cooked.
Yeah, they were going to be like an 8 to 9 win team with him. I'm not saying they're remarkable.
I don't think they were.
I want to say they had 6 or 7 wins before he got hurt, and they still had a month to play.
6 games last year?
Yeah.
How many games did they win?
Something like that.
6-11.
So, do we really think they were going to win that many more games down the stretch? Especially, they were going to be eliminated, and they were probably going to sit them anyway.
I don't disagree. I don't think their basement is 5 wins. I think if Pat Mahomes is healthy, once again, we keep saying that.
He's not going to be 100% healthy at any point this year. He's coming back from a torn ACL.
And in the last few years,
impossible.
Even beyond this past year, he keeps getting banged up. He keeps having these ankle injuries and then all these other stuff.
Part of it is because they're so bad, he keeps having to run in the regular season more than he should have to. He used to only run because
nobody's getting open.
But nobody can get open because he's throwing to a bunch of fast guys who just run straight and forget to turn around for the ball half the time. They're so bad.
Well, I will say this year too. I think Andy Reid's gonna. This is just getting a little off topic here. Andy Reid's gonna need to reinvent their offense a little bit this year.
And can I just also say, by the way, not to cut you off, Andy Reid, Hall of Fame coach. Andy Reid's one of the worst game managers in terms of clock and situations in pro football. Of the 32 head coaches employed, he may be last.
Yeah, now that Sean McDermott's not hired anymore, yeah.
Well, no, good thing that Brandon Staley's not a head coach anymore.
Brandon Staley's terrible. Oh my god.
But he's a terrible game
manager. He is. I don't disagree with that. I do think offensively, though, Pat Mahomes is on the other side of 30 now. They can't have him running as much as he used to. It's got to be one of those deals where Andy Reid's telling him, look.
And so how are they going to move the ball? Kenneth Walker?
Well, if Rasheed Rice stays healthy, hopefully if he's on the field.
Who else is catching the ball?
Noah Gray.
If I double team Rasheed Rice, who else do you believe in on this offense?
I like Tyquan Thornton. I will say I do like
Tyquan Thornton.
I do like Tyquan Thornton.
He got cut by the New England Patriots at a time when they had no NFL wide receivers. They said, you know what? We don't have a single employable pro football player in this position.
I bet they regret that. I bet they regret that move a little bit.
No, they don't.
I bet they regret that move slightly. Tyquan Thornton's, he's big, he's fast. I like Tyquan Thornton, all right? I think he can be a perfectly acceptable number 2 receiver to Rasheed Rice if Rasheed Rice is playing. If Rasheed Rice isn't playing, it becomes a little bit more problematic.
He's big, he's fast, he can't do anything required to be an NFL wide receiver. It's all he has. He's big, he's fast. He should go run track.
Who do you like more, Xavier Worthy or Tyquan Thornton?
Tyquan Thornton. I'm completely out on Xavier Worthy. I was out on Xavier Worthy before the draft. I cannot believe, you talked about Bills fans, I cannot believe the people who are upset that they didn't get Xavier Worthy. Yeah. Xavier Worthy has... Just watch Xavier Worthy play. His best moments are when all the other viable pass catchers are not on the field. That's when Xavier Worthy
His best moments are when he's not catching the ball. It's when they do reverses to him. Then he just gets into some open space. His best games
at Texas were when Isaiah Bond was hurt. His best games in Kansas City are when Rasheed Rice and Travis Kelce are hurt. He's only useful when everyone else is injured, and so we have to force feed him the ball.
Yeah, and in those games, it's not exactly like he's putting up 160 yards. He's like 10 catches, 80 yards.
Yeah, to that point, though, listen, Keon Coleman's not great either, but if you're telling me I have to either start Keon Coleman or Xavier Worthy, I'm asking if I can start Tylor Klien instead. Okay. I don't really get why people were so upset about that.
I think people were upset about it because it was a deal with the Chiefs, and, it was maybe a guy that could be the number 1 wide receiver, but obviously it hasn't worked out that way.
Yeah, can I just say the whole idea of, you can't trade with your rivals that people make is, the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And there's so many people who make that argument, and it's just like, why can't you? If you would people have been happier if the Bills stayed at that pick and took Keon Coleman? Would that have made people happy? I mean, I just don't understand what they wanted them to do in that spot. If Keon Coleman was the guy that they were going to take, why did it hurt them to move back and get capital?
That's what gets me, too, is everyone acts like we were going to take Xavier Worthy. We clearly weren't, or we would have kept the pick.
Taken him.
It's very clearly that Xavier Worthy was never Brandon Beane's guy, for better or for worse. You can say what you want about Brandon Beane and receivers, but it's very clear that he just wasn't our guy, and that's why we were willing to trade to our rival in that situation.
It's kind of like what the Bills just did in this draft, moving back. Like if Omar Cooper was their guy, or if any of these other wide receivers were their guy.
Right, they would have just drafted him, right? And you can disagree with Brandon Beane, but the point is they were never going to take Xavier Worthy there because he wasn't our guy.
Nor should they, because he's terrible.
But we've gone over a half hour. I think we've all made our stances on the Chiefs pretty clear here. We still got 2 more teams to get through in this episode. I'm in on them. Tyler's in the middle of the teeter-totter, and Mike's firing him into the sun. We have accomplished everything here. But he's the Pat Mahomes truther. We're going to take a quick time out here on 1st and 15. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to talk about a team that is kind of perplexing to me in the Los Angeles Chargers.
Things are about to get started. It's 1st and 15.
If you care to cover, we cover with care. Sterling tents and awnings for quality service and integrity. Sterling tents and awnings. No event is too big or small. For over 100 years we do it all. If you care to cover, we cover with care. Sterling tents and awnings.
Welcome back to 1st and 15. My name's Pete Zehler, the Director of Sports here at WBTA. We got Mike Rose, the Sports Editor of the Batavia Daily News, and our NFL analyst, Tylor Klien, here at WBTA. This is a show about all things NFL, and, first off, I want to say, too, we're so excited to be back doing this show. I'm pumped that we're back here doing this show, and I'm looking forward to when we get in the actual season here, but previewing the season is fun, but whenever we start breaking down these games, guys, that's what I'm really looking forward to. I can't wait till we get to that time in the year. But first, we're going to talk about the LA Chargers here a little bit. A team that, was kind of a perplexing team to me last year because I love the Chargers roster. I love Jim Harbaugh as a coach. And they just got banged up last year. Their offensive line died. Like, their entire offensive line just died, and Justin Herbert is a quarterback that he's a little mobile, but he needs a good offensive line to succeed. He's not going to succeed without it. And so we'll get into the breakdown a little bit more. I also wanted to say they were a perplexing team to me. Free agency. They bring back Khalil Mack to a 1-year deal. They sign him for a 1-year deal worth $18 million, which, listen, that's a perfectly fine guy to bring back on the edge. I don't think anyone's going to complain about that. They bring back Troy Pipkins III, an offensive tackle, on a 2-year deal worth $10 million. Considering how awful their backups were on the offensive line last year, I can't say I love bringing back one of those backups. I'm not going to sit here and lie and act like I know a lot about Pipkins. I just know their backup tackles were awful last year, and Pipkins was one of them. So, I guess it could always get worse, so bringing back Pipkins is a move to avoid that, I suppose. They signed Delshon Phillips, a linebacker, to a 2-year deal. They signed Charlie Kolar, a tight end out of Baltimore, to a 3-year deal worth $24 million, which that is a lot of money whenever you think about it, but Kolar's kind of been like an underrated guy behind Likely and Andrew for the last couple of years in Baltimore, and I'm not saying he's going to do anything crazy, but I do think he's a good tight end number 2 that kind of the Ravens have been stealing a tight end 3 for the last couple of years. So they got Kolar. They signed another Raven. They bring in Keaton Mitchell, which Tylor Klien can tell you. I stashed him on Dynasty. I stashed all these running backs on my Dynasty depth chart for a long time. This is a fast, explosive back. He's had a lot of injury issues. If he can stay healthy, though, he's the kind of guy that he's a really good receiving back, and he's really good in space. He probably is going to be running back 3 in LA. I'd be curious to see what he can do. They signed Alec Ingle, the fullback, and they signed Cole Strange, a guard, for a 2-year deal, which he's a guy that will probably be starting for Mekhi Becton. He'll replace Mekhi Becton this year. That's an upgrade. They signed Tyler Biadasz. Is that how you pronounce it, Mike? Biadasz, okay. Yeah, I'm not good with Polish names. They signed him at center, a little bit of an upgrade there, and they bring back Denzel Perryman, the linebacker, who has to be like 50 years old now. But so this is a team that, as you heard, they made a lot of moves. a lot of moves on that offensive line, and that's a good thing because that offensive line, the starters are good, but they didn't have depth, and last year that proved to be a huge issue for a team that in the playoffs, what New England did to them, to their offensive line in the playoffs is illegal in 10 states. Like, it was not good.
Yeah, I mean, at one point in the season, with all these injuries that they had, they and the Raiders were going at each other for who's the worst offensive line in football. So these, getting healthy at the tackle position for them is obviously huge, especially those two tackles. I mean, those are two very, very promising tackles to have. And then the center signing was huge for them. It wasn't a little bit of an upgrade; it was a very big upgrade for them. So, this offensive line is the focal point of the Chargers season next year.
Yeah, Biotish, a really good pickup at center. He's been around for a while now, quality starter. Charlie Kohler, arguably the best blocking tight end in pro football. He definitely has a case, and that's going to be primarily his role on this offense with the Chargers. They also signed David Njoku, who I mentioned earlier in the show. That just happened, I think, within the last couple of days of when we're recording this. I think Sunday or Saturday from Cleveland. He's a pass-catching upgrade for them. I would assume Njoku slots in kind of as their tight end one, Kohler is the blocking guy, and then Oronde Gadsden more as the tight end two in terms of pass catching. The rookie last year out of Syracuse who had a quality year for them.
Loved him at Syracuse.
Yeah, I missed Njoku completely, by the way, which is a huge signing for them.
Yeah, it happened so recently, so I thought he may have. And then Trey Pipkins, I mean, not great, but you need depth up front. Cole Strange, similarly, should provide some depth. They drafted on the offensive line as well. Cole Strange is a former first-round pick. He had no business going in the first round of that draft. That was a Bill Belichick special, but he is a former first-round pick as a center and now plays guard because he wasn't a good center. But they did a really good job upgrading in terms of the offensive line and just their ability, I think, to run the football, which is what Harbaugh loves to do. Charlie Kohler, I just saw a clip of Charlie Kohler, I think yesterday or today, just talking about, running the ball and how much fun he has when it's 3rd and 1, and he was like, and we know they're going to run the ball, and we're going to run it, and your mother knows it, and your sister knows it, and we still go and get that yard. He said he likes that more than catching touchdowns.
Well, I think one thing, too, by the way, which isn't necessarily a free agent move, but they bring in Mike McDaniel as offensive coordinator, too.
Oh, yeah, I was going to get to
that. That is a huge, huge move. You want to talk about a guy who's really creative with a run game. Look what he did in Miami for years with Devon Achane, and back when he had Raheem Mostert. I mean, you can say what you want about the guy as a head coach, but there's no doubt that guy is brilliant when it comes to calling offensive plays. He'll be calling the shots now in Los Angeles on that offense, and I am very excited to see what he does with the plethora of weapons he has in this offense.
You said you think Mitchell might be the 3rd running back. I think Mitchell in this offense is the number 2 running back. I think he complements Omar.
He's kind of an Achane type running back.
He complements Hampton so well too. So I think it's of an underrating signing to talk about a running back. That's like maybe a 3rd, 2nd kind of guy. But in this offense with that kind of speed, I think it's a very underrated signing for sure.
Yeah, I think he definitely slots in as their number 2. Obviously, Najee Harris was there briefly last year before tearing his Achilles, but they have Kamani Vidal, Jarrett Patterson also on the roster. I think Mitchell's just a better player than those guys and should slot ahead of them on the depth chart. Now, Keaton Mitchell, you mentioned the injuries. If he's banged up, who knows what it looks like. And Amarian Hampton was injured last year as well. So injuries were certainly an issue with
injuries
the Chargers.
Were a problem for the Chargers, absolutely.
And with just like with any team, we've talked about with the Chiefs and everyone else, injuries are always going to play a factor. But for the Chargers particularly, it was a real issue last year that hindered their upside in a pretty major way.
So let's talk about the draft now with this team a little bit. In the first round, they go out and they get Akeem Mesidor out of Miami on the edge, who was a monster. He is an older guy. He is a guy that I believe 25 years old coming out of the draft. But this is a team that I think is ready to compete now. And when you draft a guy that's older, if you're going to draft a 25-year-old rookie, you better be a team that's ready to win now. And I do think the Chargers fit that mold. So I think you can afford to take a monster that's a little bit older, which they did with Mesidor there. In the second round, they shore up that line with Jake Slaughter at center. I'll be very curious. He probably will not be playing center for them after the offseason moves they make. He could certainly be a backup, though. Maybe they move him over to guard. We'll have to see. But once again, we can't stress it enough. Them having depth in the offensive line room, certainly something they need, and they're not going to complain about that. They also go out, and in the 4th round, they get Brennan Thomas, a wide receiver out of Mississippi State. He ran a 4.26 at the 40-yard dash at the draft, so this is a speedy guy that will kind of complement their receiver room. That Quentin Johnston's a speedy guy, but I don't think they have that true, just straight-up burner guy in this offense. He could certainly be that guy for them. Later in the draft, also in the 4th round, they take Travis Burke, a tackle. They take Genesis Smith, a safety. They take Nick Barrett a defensive tackle. They take Logan Taylor a guard. They take Alex Harkey a guard. And that was their draft. So that draft, very, very, very obvious, guys, their offseason was our offensive line ruined our season. We're going to make sure we have some depth this year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there was an obvious and clear need, and they targeted that in this draft. They took 4 offensive linemen. So, it was a very obvious need this going into this offseason, and they did it in free agency and the draft. So,
I think Slaughter most likely projects as competing for one of the starting guard spots, whether it's with Cole Strange or Trevor Penning or wherever they want to slot him in. And then maybe you move him back to center when Biotich's contract comes off the books because he is a little bit older.
Right now he's projected to start at left guard according to a couple sources I've looked at, but that's obviously all projection.
Right. Akeem Messidor, I think what's interesting with him is, like you said, they're ready to compete, but there's not really like an obvious spot for him to play immediately on this defense, which I found it interesting. You take a guy at that position at that age when you don't really have a natural spot for him to contribute immediately. Now, they're going to be able to mix him in. Khalil Mack's obviously getting older, but they have Tuliatu on the other side, who had an excellent season last year, kind of a very underrated, I think, around the league. I don't think a lot of people know how good he was, but he was a double-digit sack guy last year for the Chargers. So it'll be interesting to see where Messidor slots in the more immediate future. And then Brendan Thompson, if you didn't see the clips of Mike McDaniel in their draft for him, how excited he was to get him. He's very fast. I'm not very high on Brendan Thompson as a wide receiver. I think he's, kind of the classic really fast guy. But in the 4th round, at least it's not like Darius Hayward-Bay, who, not to rub salt in the wounds of our Raiders fan here, but like fast guy who can't actually play wide receiver in the 1st round. It's the 4th round.
And he's probably the wide receiver 4, so I mean, you can live with that.
Right. He's going to mix in. They're going to have packages for him. I'm sure McDaniel will to get him in and take some shots with him down the field. He was an Oklahoma guy briefly, so that's part of my grudge against him probably as well. He transferred out of Oklahoma. So.
Darius Hayward-Bay, Raiders legend.
So what any other takes you guys have free agency draft here?
No, I mean, I like Mike said it about the mixing in with Khalil Mack's aging. He's getting older. I think it was overall just a good draft. I think they targeted their needs and it was very obvious. So
let's kind of we're a little early here to talk about previewing their season. That's okay because I think we can go long on this here. And let's talk about how we think they're going to do this year. I'll be bold right away. And I'll commit to this projection. I wasn't going to be this bold, but we've sat here. We kind of talked about it off camera. We talked about it on camera. I've looked at their roster. My projection is I think the Los Angeles Chargers have the best record in the NFL next year. I think the Los Angeles Chargers will be a 14-15 win team next year. And I love this roster. I just feel like this is a roster without a hole, and that's one thing to say they don't have a hole, but I also feel like they're pretty strong everywhere. I feel like they're fairly strong at every position. So first off, we haven't really talked about Justin Herbert, who got banged up last year, but Justin Herbert's a guy that has shown us in the past that when you protect him and keep him healthy, he is absolutely a top 5 quarterback and can be elite. If you give him good protection and you give him weapons, which if they stay healthy, which with every team that's a big thing, I'm gonna stop kind of beating on that drum because I feel like we say that with every team. It's just kind of repetitive. Yes, they need to stay healthy. That's true of everyone. But if you can stay healthy, Justin Herbert, he is a very elite quarterback. And then talking about their weapons, which is kind of something else we didn't be able to get too deep into. I don't believe they brought back Keenan Allen, but that's okay. He was like 35 years old anyways. But this is a team that, it's kind of funny. Last year going into the season, it was like, all right, Ladd McConkey is going to be their elite number 1. Then you're going to have Keenan Allen as the number 2, and hopefully Quentin Johnston figures it out. And I feel like that almost completely reversed over the course of last season, where Quentin Johnston kind of emerged as the number 1 and had a really good comeback year after being an afterthought, a former first-round pick out of TCU. And Keenan Allen was that number 2 guy, and he was very good for his age last year at number 2. And Ladd McConkey kind of had a down year, didn't put up a lot of big numbers, kind of got lost in that offense at times. But obviously the talent's still there. He was a huge producer at college at Georgia. He was a huge producer his rookie year in the NFL. My point being is I like their receivers they have. Quentin Johnston proved he can play last year. Ladd McConkey we know can play. Even Trey Harris is a number 3. I don't mind him much at all. And we just talked about Brendan Thompson. That will bring speed to that offense. Their running back room with Omarion Hampton. We talked about Keaton Mitchell a little bit. And this is an offensive line that's been completely, well, first off, their starters were decent. Like their tackles, you could argue they have the best pair of tackles in the NFL when they're healthy. I mean, Rashawn Slater is absolutely elite, and Joe Alt is absolutely elite. If they can stay healthy, that might be the best pair of tackles in the NFL. And then you shore that up with the signings they made and the things they did in the draft. The tight end room's great. And then we look at the defense. Up front, I like where they're at. Their linebackers are very solid. The one weakness you could really point to in this team is I don't necessarily love their secondary. I think they could use maybe, if they were going to make a trade in the offseason, I think it would be for a corner or an in-season trade a few weeks into the season. If they could trade for, an elite corner, I think that would really help shore up this defense a little bit. But my point being is I think this team is good everywhere. I think that their coaching I love. Tyler knows I'm a big Jim Harbaugh guy, and to get Mike McDaniel in the same room with Jim Harbaugh, those are two guys that like to run the ball. Jim Harbaugh is kind of more of that old school approach to running the ball. He likes to run between the tackles, hard-nosed football, where Mike McDaniel is kind of the new age style of running the ball, where he likes to go outside the tackles, find creative ways to get different guys the ball. And I kind of think they'll complement. If they're able to work together, which I see no reason why they couldn't, I think they'll kind of complement each other with their clashing styles in a way and be able to really produce a fun offense to watch. And I think this is a team that if they stay healthy, they'll hit on all cylinders. I really think they're going to be exciting to watch next year, and they're going to kind of be that team that they're going to start the season like 8-0, and you're going to be like, oh, wow, are they for real this year?
Yeah, the longer we've sat here and I've had to look at the Chargers roster, I tend to agree. I think it's a really talented team. I think they're really deep. If you look at, especially like the tight end room, like they have three guys who can play with Njoku and Gadsden and Kohler. The wide receivers are relatively deep, even without Keenan Allen being there. I think Trey Harris, for the role he plays, a really good run blocker. I mean, they're going to play a lot of two tight end sets this year, I think, and they're going to run the ever-living hell out of the football, would be my projection of what this offense looks like, and they're going to live in the play-action game. I will say Quentin Johnston did lead the league last year in yards off busted coverages, so I'm not completely sold on the idea that Quentin Johnston is, as good as it looked at times last year, but he did catch the ball on the busted coverages.
Big improvement.
Which was a big upgrade over what we saw early in his career. I think the defense is solid. They have a lot of guys who are underrated. I mean, we haven't even mentioned Derwin James, who may be the best safety in football when he's healthy. The biggest problem with the Chargers, and this is like completely, this is going to sound kind of gimmicky, but like the Chargers just never catch breaks. They're like the most unlucky franchise like I can think of. Mm-hmm. We're talking about a team that once missed the playoffs, having the number one offense and number one defense in the league because their special teams was historically bad. If you don't know about that season, look it up.
As a Raiders fan, I don't know.
You guys have 3 Super Bowls.
We don't catch breaks.
Yeah, I mean, what are we talking about?
I mean,
just because it's been bad recently.
Since the Tuck rule, we might have the Chargers beaten and not catching breaks.
You made a Super Bowl this millennium, and the Chargers have had way better teams.
How did that go?
How did that Super Bowl
go? That's right. We fired our head coach, and he ended up coaching that other team that we beat and beat us.
Tyler, the Chargers chose. Brandon Staley literally just decided not to make the playoffs against you guys one year.
Do I need to talk about the 2020 season?
Listen, the Raiders have been bad in recent memory, but the Raiders have just been like wildly incompetent. The Chargers have been good and just never can seemingly get over the hump. The Raiders are just bad. So, I don't think the Raiders are necessarily unlucky. I think they're bad and poorly run.
I think there's a bit of both, but yeah, they're definitely
bad. The Chargers have been, really well run and consistently have good teams, and they just never seem to catch a break. And so, for that reason, I'm skeptical of the fact that the Chargers are suddenly going to start catching breaks. Now, I think the roster's great. Like I said, I think it's all there for this to be a great season for the Chargers, but I think it's all been there for the Chargers to have a great season 10 different times in the last 20 years, and they've never amounted to much of anything. I mean, the best season they had, Phillip Rivers had to play the AFC Championship on a torn ACL. That's the best Chargers team we have in the last 20, 25 years. Maybe ever. Could be the best Chargers team we've had, ever. I don't know how far back my Chargers knowledge goes there necessarily, but I just look at this team and I'm skeptical of the fact that it's all going to come together. But if it did, it would make a lot of sense because the roster's really talented and they have one of the best quarterbacks in football and they have a really good coach and they have one of the best offensive coordinators in football. There's a lot to like about the Chargers this year. I think I'd be surprised if they finish any lower in this division than second. Yeah. I think they have the highest floor probably of any team in this division. I just don't know if I'm sold on the ceiling.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that the Rams, I know Pete said that he likes this roster. I like the Rams roster. I think the most. I don't even know if I said it last episode.
Yeah.
I think the Rams are my Super Bowl pick if I had to pick.
They're right up there, I think.
But yeah, I mean, again, it's always health with every team, and this team is it was obvious last year with that offensive line. If it can stay healthy, there is no reason that this team can make it to the Super Bowl. Like Pete said, there's no reason that this team can't start the year 8-0 and be like, man, look at this team, look at this roster. I think it's interesting because last week we did a division where we all, I think all of us had all three teams making the playoffs, right? We all had the 49ers, Seahawks.
No, I did not have the 49ers in the playoffs.
No, we didn't.
That was just you,
me?
Kyle Shanahan.
It's just me. Well, it did happen last year with that division, and I think it can happen with the NFC West. And I think it can happen this year with the AFC West. I know we kind of were all over with the, up and down with the Chiefs, but the Chiefs have the potential of making the playoffs.
We all said we think the ceiling
least.
of the Chiefs is the playoff team.
Yeah, exactly. So this division is going to be a tough division. I mean, the Raiders I don't think have the worst roster in football. I think they definitely can be a feisty team. So it's going to be a fun division to follow and to watch this year for sure. And I think the Chargers can definitely win this division. There's no doubt about it. But I would say if I had to pick where they are, I'd probably say I would pick them second in this division.
Something always just goes wrong for the Chargers. It's always something. Last year it was the offensive line. The special teams has really doomed them like a number of different years historically. They seem to never have a kicker that can kick a ball through the uprights, which is kind of like the only job requirement to be a kicker in the NFL. So it just seems like something always goes wrong for the Chargers. I don't have a good reasoning for it. I'm a really big like numbers and logic.
I have a hard time accepting this from you after you tell me I can't take the Chiefs' history into consideration.
Well, I think this is different. This is like the electrical substation in San Francisco. I'm like conspiracy theory on this one. I'm not using any logic or basis of statistical evidence for this. I just think that the Chargers may be cursed, and so I don't think they can win the Super Bowl. That's it.
All right. Well, so I think my prediction for them is I'm going bold. I think they have the best record in the NFL. And with that, obviously, I think their ceiling is winning the Super Bowl. I don't know if I'm picking them to win the Super Bowl yet. I got to really chew on that. But
the Chargers would be the type of team to have the best record in the NFL and then just like lose their first playoff game.
Yeah, lose to like the Titans who snuck into the playoffs somehow.
It would be so Chargers coded.
Yeah, that would be very, very Chargers coded. All right, well, that is our take on the Chargers there. We still have one team left to go, a team that was a Bo Nix ankle away from going to the Super Bowl last year. And we're going to take a quick time out here. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about the Denver Broncos on the other side of this break.
The team, things are about to get started. It's 1st and 15.
And welcome back to 1st and 15 here on the WBTA Sports Network. Pete Zehler, Director of Sports here at WBTA, alongside Mike Rose, the sports editor at the Batavia Daily News, and Tylor Klien, an NFL analyst here on WBTA. We've been going all through the AFC West. We've talked about the Raiders. We've talked about the Chiefs. We've talked about the Chargers. Now it is time to talk about the defending champions of the AFC West, the Denver Broncos. So the Denver Broncos last year, I don't want to say came out of nowhere. They made the playoffs as a wild card the year before, and they were certainly trending upwards, but I don't think anyone really thought they were going to be a 14-win team last year, be the one seed in the AFC, and really reach the heights that they did. However, they did. They did it in a very interesting way. We'll get into that a little bit later here in this segment. Let's first start out, though, talking about their free agency here for the Denver Broncos. And you got to start with the biggest free agent move maybe in all of the NFL this offseason, but certainly the biggest one for the Broncos. They bring in Jalen Waddle on a trade. They sent a first, third, and fourth round pick to the Dolphins for Jalen Waddle, and they acquire a guy that is, by all accounts, an elite receiver. In Miami, he never really reached the height of his potential, I would say. He's a guy that's floated around like a 1,000-yard, 80-catch-a-year guy, somewhere in that range. Certainly great production. That's obviously pretty elite right there. But he's a guy that I feel like everyone always feels like there's an extra layer to Jalen Waddle that just has never really been uncovered by the Dolphins. He played in Tyreek Hill's shadow quite a bit there in Miami for quite a while. But he will, especially as Courtland Sutton ages, he will by all means be the number one receiver in Denver. And before I even get into anything else, I'm just going to send it over to, we'll start with Mike because this is one that's worth talking about individually. Mike, your take on the Jalen Waddle acquisition.
Yeah, he's had a couple down years in a row. The last two seasons, fell short of 1,000 yards each of the last 2 years. But a lot of that has to do with just the kind of mess that was the Miami Dolphins. The last couple years, Tua took a lot of his injuries and guys getting fired and guys. It was just kind of a mess in Miami. So you look at Jalen Waddle. I think he's easily one of the higher end receivers that we have in the NFL. I think he's super talented. He has a very complete receiver. He can stretch the field. He's a good route runner. He can make those catches over the middle. He can play on the outside. He can play in the slot. So you really kind of get the whole package with Jalen Waddle, and I think he brings a dimension to their offense that was kind of lacking. They never really had. I mean, Courtland Sutton has, that kind of jump ball, 50-50 ball down the field skill set, and he can work in the intermediate game a little bit, but Jalen Waddle brings a whole another level to that team's receiving room that wasn't there previously. And I think it is worth noting, by the way, I know we're kind of talking about this before we get to the rest of the offseason, their draft, but this pretty much was their offseason.
It was,
draft.
yeah.
They didn't really do a whole heck of a lot else besides trade for Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, no, they really didn't. And honestly, when we get talking about this roster, they really didn't need to do much. This is a pretty good roster. So, but yeah, there was not much to do for this team.
So looking at the other moves, they bring back J.K. Dobbins to a 2-year, $20 million deal, which, listen, after some of the other price amounts we were talking about on running backs, I think that's a pretty fair deal on J.K. Dobbins.
Now, here's a running back deal that makes some sense.
So this is actually pretty, some of the dollar amounts we were throwing around, that's kind of a bargain on. J.K. Dobbins is a guy that for the first 9 games of the year, he's going to give you 100 yards per game before he gets inevitably injured, but he is a monster for those 9 games, and you're happy you have him for those 9 games, and in those 9 games, he's getting talked about as the top 5 running back in football until he gets inevitably injured. But J.K. Dobbins, I like that re-signing by him. J.K. Dobbins is always a guy that I grab late in fantasy drafts because he always seems to slide, and same thing in fantasy. For the 8 weeks you have him, he's a great guy to have on your fantasy team. You just better have a backup plan for whenever he goes down. They also bring back Alex Singleton to a 2-year, $15.5 million contract, which Alex Singleton, I know he missed some time after he had surgery with testicular cancer, but he's a guy that very high contributor on this defense. He's a guy that gets involved all over the place on Sean Payton's defense. I like that, even though he's kind of older now. I think he's 32, 33 years old. But I think this is a good re-signing by them, especially that price point. I feel like that was a very fair price point for Alex Singleton. A couple other moves they made. They bring back Justin Schnaud back on their defense to a 3-year, $18 million deal. He's kind of a depth linebacker for them. They bring back Jaleel McLaughlin, a guy that I'm not high on at all, but he's probably going to be their 3rd or 4th running back, so that just kind of is what it is. And, of course, they re-sign a little Jordan Humphrey, a guy that I think Sean Payton has a secret crush on, because Sean Payton, if Sean Payton didn't exist, I don't think little Jordan Humphrey would be in the NFL, but no matter where Sean Payton goes, he brings little Jordan Humphrey with him, and he just keeps giving him contracts. So they of course, bring back little Jordan Humphrey.
He's on the all-name team, for sure.
Absolutely.
Elite name, little Jordan Humphrey.
But yeah, so that's their moves. Do you guys have any takes about any of these other moves? I know there's really nothing there, but J.K. Dobbins is really the only real one they brought him back.
No, it's kind of hard to talk about a draft where they didn't start till the 3rd round too. So it's I don't really have too much to talk about that. And we've covered it. It's Jalen Waddle is this offseason.
Yeah,
and that's really all I got.
I think they got Dobbins at a good number.
Yeah, the Dobbins re-signing.
That's not a nothing burger.
I think they did good to bring back the guys that they needed to bring back. They did lose a couple guys. I think it's probably worth talking about some of the guys they lost in free agency. John Franklin Myers was a really key part of this defense last year. Dre Greenlaw departed. P.J. Locke was a guy who made some plays in their secondary. So I think that's kind of more notable than maybe necessarily
the John Franklin Myers one for sure.
John Franklin Myers for sure is the biggest loss on this defense from last year, and we'll see how they go about replacing his production in the middle of that really, really talented defense. I think they'll ultimately be okay, but I think worth noting kind of those 3 guys that they lost defensively because
definitely.
Other than that, it was just basically a re-signing of guys in free agency, and I think they got good numbers on pretty much everyone.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the draft now a little bit. As Tyler mentioned, they didn't start till the 3rd round. They didn't have a ton of picks. There's not a ton to go into here. Their first pick, though, the 2nd pick of the 3rd round, they take Tyler Onedium. Once again, I'm really, really bad with names, as you're going to learn as we do this show. But he's out of Texas A&M, a defensive tackle. They take him the 3rd round. They take Jonah Coleman, the running back out of Washington, in the 4th round. I believe the 4th running back to go in the draft. They take Jonah Coleman, which, by the way, this is a team that now has a lot of running backs on their roster. We kind of talked about the Cardinals roasting them about this. This is a team now. They have J.K. Dobbins. They have Jaleel McLaughlin. They have Tyler Batty. They have this guy they just drafted here.
Jeremiah Love makes more money than all of these guys put together.
They also go and they draft Cage Casey in the fourth round, an offensive tackle out of Boise State. Fifth round, they go and get Justin Jolly, the tight end out of NC State. And in the seventh round, they took three guys: Miles Scott, the safety out of Illinois, Dolan Bentley, the tight end out of Utah, and Red Murdoch, the linebacker out of UB. So they once again, I don't think there's a lot to talk about here, but Mike Rose, you got anything to really break down here?
I have three guys that I actually do want to talk about.
Okay. All right, so we're going deep.
All right.
Jonah Coleman is a running back that I really like. Yes, mark that down somewhere.
2 for 7.
I really like Jonah Coleman. I think they got him a good spot. He's a much better player than Mike Washington, who the Raiders drafted in the fourth round later on. I think he has a chance to be a contributor pretty quickly. Has shown some good ability and good production in his time at Washington. Could run in between the tackles, has some good burst, good at evading tacklers. So I like Jonah Coleman. Justin Jolly, I think, is an interesting pick at tight end.
Love the name.
Yeah, it's a
First
great
of all,
name.
another great name.
Will Jordan.
Sean Payton's got a great name team here. But I think Justin Jolly is going to push Adam Troutman as the number 2 tight end. I wouldn't be surprised if he overtakes him relatively early on. And with Evan Ingram, who's kind of dealt with some injuries and regressed pretty rapidly in recent years, I'm not going to be surprised if Justin Jolly is the number 1 tight end on this team. He's very fluid as a route runner. He can make some plays with the ball in his hands. So I think Justin Jolly could be a guy who's an underrated playmaker for this team. And then we got to talk about Red Murdoch, the UB linebacker, Mr. Irrelevant in this year's draft. First, pretty good history of UB linebackers in recent years, if you look at it. I mean, we're talking about Joe Andreessen, who's currently playing with the Buffalo Bills, obviously, and I would expect him to have an impact this year, given what their linebacking depth chart kind of looks like.
The great Khalil Mack.
Khalil Mack, obviously.
Yeah.
Sean Dolick last year was a guy who was really productive for the Los Angeles
with the Raiders.
Rams. So there's a pretty good history of UB linebackers. Now, Red Murdoch was as productive as any of those guys in his time at UB. He holds the NCAA record for career forced fumbles with 17. He's a sure tackler. He's really good at playing the football. He's really good playing downhill. He has to get a lot better playing the pass, but I think as a 2-down linebacker, Red Murdoch is a guy who can play immediately at the NFL level, and he's going to be a good special teams guy, I would imagine, as well. So I think he's a guy worth mentioning. I like Jonah Coleman. I like Justin Jolly. I don't know a ton about some of these other guys here, but those were 3 guys I wanted to point out in the draft class that didn't make a pick until the 3rd round.
Yeah.
Still, I think some impact coming in for the Broncos.
Which I that's why I love the Jalen Waddle trade even more, is because I don't think this is a team that needed those picks, and especially in a draft where it was pretty easy to trade away these draft picks. So I think that again, this is the Jalen Waddle offseason for the Broncos.
Yeah, no, we'll talk about what the Dolphins did with those picks in the AFC East episode, which, by the way, that's a team I'm excited to talk about because I feel like we're all just going to absolutely hate the Miami Dolphins.
I was about to say, you're excited to talk about the Dolphins?
Yeah,
I'm just excited.
There's not much excitement.
They're my least favorite team in the NFL, so I can't wait to crap on them a little bit.
I don't think Dolphins fans want to talk about the Dolphins.
But yeah, so let's break down this team. We have a special guest that'll be joining us shortly, a Denver Broncos super fan, Christopher Gazian out of Silver Lake, New York. We'll get to that, though. We are going to so I'll start with my breakdown of this team, the Denver Broncos. Let me first start out by saying that on offense, I was ready to kind of crap on him. I do like the receiver room. I will say I do like the receiver room. I think it's a very good receiver room. Jalen Waddle's great. Tyler knows I'm a Troy Franklin guy. I think Troy Franklin's an excellent wide receiver. I think he could take a big next step. He kind of took a huge step last year, but I think this year he could continue that. I do think Courtland Sutton's probably on the trend of his career where he's going to start to get less and less productive. It doesn't really matter, though. They got guys there to replace him. Pat Bryant's another guy that can play. If you got to play him, he's a guy that can play. Offensive line, I mean, Garrett Bowles, phenomenal player. Mike McGlinchey is a solid guy to have on that line. Quinn Marins is a very good as well.
Miners.
I'm bad with names. We're getting to that. We'll get there. But the running back room, I'm not a big R.J. Harvey guy. I will say that. I don't love R.J. Harvey. So whenever J.K. Dobbins does inevitably get injured week 9, I'm not big on R.J. Harvey. I'll be very curious. I'll be looking out now to see if Jonah Coleman can be that guy that steps in after Mike Rose just hyped him up to us a little bit. So I'll be keeping my eye on that because I'm not a big R.J. Harvey guy. But the biggest problem for me with the Denver Broncos offense is Bo Nix. I am a certified Bo Nix hater. Everyone knows that I am. Here's my thing, though. There is a rhyme and a reason. I don't just hate the guy to hate the guy. I feel like Bo Nix is constantly propped up and talked about because his stats. And anytime I watch Bo Nix play, it's like the eye test. Like I see these numbers and everyone's talking to Bo Nix, and I'm like, oh. Then I watch him play and I'm just not impressed. He struggles. He's inconsistent down the field. He just seems to miss a lot of throws down the field, and sometimes even the short yardage ones. He'll make like a five-yard outlet pass that he'll throw into the dirt or throw 10 yards over his receiver's head. He's just a guy that I feel like isn't very consistent at the quarterback position. I don't feel like he's very particularly good under pressure at the quarterback position. And Bo Nix is just, I don't trust Bo Nix. Bo Nix is a guy that if he's the quarterback of my team, I don't trust him to take me to the promised land as a fan of that team. Now, defensively, I'm not going to talk too much about this defense because it's phenomenal. I'm not going to bait on this defense at all. Nick Bonito, one of the best defensive players in football. Pat Surtain, the best cornerback in football. This is the defense. I mean, they got guys, Hufanga is one of the best safeties in football. Riley Moss, a phenomenal second corner to have on your team. Talked about Alex Singleton. I really like Alex.
Best white corner in football.
Yeah, best white corner? I don't know. Cooper DeJean, come on now. But this is a team that is fantastic on defense. No question about it. Here's my problem with the Denver Broncos, though. We talked about 2 years ago the Kansas City Chiefs, how they won all those one-score games, and then the next year they just lost them all. My problem with the Broncos is last year they really weren't impressive in going 14-3. Listen to some of the scores of these games. They beat the hapless New York Jets 13-11 with Justin Fields. They beat a frisky, I guess, New York Giants team by 1 point. They beat a Houston Texans team that didn't have C.J. Stroud at that time by 3 points. They beat the worst team in the NFL by record, the Raiders, by 3 points. They beat a Chiefs team that we just talked about how much they struggled last year by 3 points. They beat a Commanders team that didn't have I'm drawing up Jaden Daniels at the time by 1 point in overtime. They beat the Raiders again by a touchdown. They go and they get absolutely dominated by the Jacksonville Jaguars, which were a good team. I'm not hating on that loss, but they did get dominated that game. And then they go and beat the Patrick Mahomes Chief by a touchdown that they scored late in the game that was tied with 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. So that is my problem. And they also beat the Titans by 8 points, and the Titans were terrible last year too. That's my problem with the Broncos, is they played all these close games last year against not good teams, and they barely won. Like, they were just on the right side of barely winning all of these games. This year, they got better with the Jalen Waddle move. I won't deny that. I don't feel like as a team, though, they got significantly better as a team. And I don't trust Bo Nix, and I just don't trust them to win all those close games again this year. And that's kind of where I'm at with the Denver Broncos. Now, my prediction for them, that's a good defense. This will be a competitive team. I think they're going to finish. I think the Chargers are going to win the division. I think the Chiefs will finish second. I'm predicting the Broncos to finish third in this great division. That's still like somewhere between a 9 and 11 win team, and I absolutely think they're in that range. If they win 12 games, I wouldn't be stunned. They have the talent to do it. They showed it last year. But do I think they repeat 14 wins? No. Do I think they win this division? No. I just don't see them winning all these close games again this year.
So I'll start with this team at the wide receiver room. I love this wide receiver room. I think it's the best in football. And not only do I think it's the best in football, but I think we'll see guys like Pat Bryant, Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin all take another step forward this year. Jalen Waddle is the perfect addition to this offense. I think he complements Courtland Sutton and all these other guys so well. And it's perfect. He is a perfect player for Bo Nix, because I do agree with Pete. I'm not the biggest Bo Nix guy. I think he struggles getting the ball downfield. I've been a massive Tua hater. Even when they were scoring 70 points against the Broncos, I still was like, Tua stinks. And you saw how important Jalen Waddle was for Tua, getting out the ball quick and getting those extra yards. Jalen Waddle's going to fit perfectly in this system for Bo Nix, for Sean Payton. I think this offense starts with this wide receiver room, and their offensive line. Pete mentioned it. It's a really good offensive line. I think Sean Payton is going to just love calling plays this year for this team. And as far as defense, Mike talked about it last week. The Seahawks probably have the best defense in the NFL. If there was a team that was going to compete with them for that second best defense or best defense, this is that team. I'm all in on the Broncos. I don't know if I like them to win the Super Bowl, because I think the Rams have the best roster in football, in my personal opinion. But if that was your Super Bowl today, if I had to pick what the Super Bowl is today, I think the Broncos and the Rams very well could be that. So yeah, I'm very, very in on the Broncos this year.
Just a brief sidebar before we go to Mike Tower. This is just a random thought that popped in my head. Gun to your head, Sam Darnold or Bo Nix, who are you taking at quarterback?
Sam Darnold.
Okay. I think it's pretty easy too, but I just know you were down on Sam Darnold a little bit the last episode. I just wanted to make sure. All right, over to Mike.
I mean, well, real quick, we talked about it last episode again. At least I think it was last episode with the K Klubnik. Maybe it was the draft show. K Klubnik lost me a lot of money in college. Bo Nix lost me a lot of money in college, so there's a correlation there. Pete's got his Notre Dame bias. If you lose me money in college, I probably don't like you, even if you are a good quarterback. But I don't, regardless of the money part of it, I'm just not a believer in Bo Nix. But I am a believer in this wide receiver room. I'm a believer in Sean Payton. I think they will do a great job, especially with this running back room. It's a running back room by committee, and there doesn't necessarily need to be a lead running back. I think R.J. Harvey and J.K. Dobbins, assuming that they can stay healthy, complement each other really well, and I think Sean Payton will do a good job with that. So
fair take.
Yeah.
I teased it last week. This is the team that I believe is going to win the Super Bowl next year. I really like this roster. Now, let me just say, I'm not the biggest Bo Nix guy either. But I just think this is, Tyler said best wide receiver room in the league. I mean, it's hard to argue. Maybe Philadelphia might be the only wide receiver room that competes top to bottom with how many guys? They have 6 guys who could legitimately play meaningful snaps. Sutton, Jalen Waddle, Troy Franklin, Pat Bryant. I love Marvin Mims, another Oklahoma guy, but he's flash talent, and he's also an all-pro return guy for them in the special teams game. We mentioned little Jordan Humphrey. As much as maybe he wouldn't have a job without Sean Payton, he's proved he could play. He's made some plays when he's been forced to be out there, and he's a very good run-blocking wide receiver as well.
Why Sean Payton loves him.
They're 4 deep at running back with Dobbins, Harvey, Jonah Coleman, the rookie, who I've talked about briefly, and Jaleel McLaughlin. Whatever you think of that group, when you put them all together, that's a quality running back room that they have. Same thing at tight end. Evan Ingram, Adam Troutman, Justin Jolly. I think that's a pretty deep, complete room at the tight end spot. They're very good up front on the offensive line. And then you look at the defense, like Tyler said, could be the best defense in the NFL. It would be tough to argue against it. They're really good in the trenches. Obviously, they have Nick Bonino and Jonathan Cooper coming off the edges. They have the former Defensive Player of the Year in Pat Surtain in the secondary. They have Ufunga at safety, Riley Moss, very good number 2 corner, Jaquan McMillan as a nickel cornerback, does a really good job. They have a really good kicker in Will Lutz. There's no holes on this roster. They have a Super Bowl winning head coach, and as much as you would reference a lot of the close games that they won last year, if you look at, they lost 4 games the entire season. 3 of them were by 1 score. The defense that this team has gives them an incredibly high floor. And that's why I think at the end of the day, you can say some of it is fluky and you're ending up on the right side of results, but I think it's just how this team is built. And regardless of what you think of Bo Nix, when it's winning time, Bo Nix in the 4th quarter has been excellent in his NFL career. And I sat in the building in Power Field at Mile High last year when the Broncos went toe-to-toe with the Buffalo Bills, and say what you want about how things ended up in that game and what you may think of the officiating and some of Josh Allen's miscues, but Bo Nix was very impressive in that game. He didn't make any mistakes. He made all the plays he had to. He made all the throws he needed to. He identified the weak spots in that Bills secondary and made plays on them when, the likes of Dane Jackson and Darnell Savage were forced onto the field. It was touchdowns. He made them pay. And so I walked away from that game feeling a lot better about Bo Nix than I have at any point in his NFL career. Just sitting in the building and really getting to watch him up close. Because I sat there genuinely and I'm like, I really want to pay attention to Bo Nix tonight and see what he looks like. Because you knew it was going to be a story in that game. Bo Nix, Josh Allen, obviously the Josh Allen's a much better quarterback, but could Bo Nix handle that moment? And I thought he passed with flying colors in that game, and obviously then he gets hurt and they lose by 3 points to the Patriots. But you look at their regular season losses. They lost at the Chargers by 3 points. They lost at the Colts when the Colts got out to that hot start by 1 point. The only bad loss all year was the Jaguars. We already talked about that was a good Jaguars team.
Yeah, their losses were, I'm not disagreeing with that. Their losses were impressive. I was more not inspired by some of their wins. You take a win. I'm not arguing that.
And I think there's some scheduling things that play in the Broncos' favor this year. First, they're going to get the Chiefs in week 1. Is Patrick Mahomes going to be on the field? We don't know. If he's not, you're probably starting 1-0, right? And then if you look around the AFC, they get a first-place schedule this year, which normally you would say is a detriment. But if you look at who won these divisions last year, they're going to draw,
They're going to draw New England.
They're going to draw New England.
They're going to draw Pittsburgh.
They're going to draw Pittsburgh. And they're going to draw Jacksonville. right?
Jacksonville's still a great team.
Jacksonville's still a good team, but I think you feel good about going against Pittsburgh and New England over the second-place schedule, which is Houston, Baltimore, the Bills, and the Chargers. I mean, that's a much tougher kind of gauntlet you have to run, I think, this year. If you look at the second-place schedule this year, it was basically the first-place schedule from a year ago, outside of the Chargers kind of taking the place of the Chiefs in that spot. So I think they catch a break in that regard as well. And I think, they have a great home field advantage. I think there's a lot going in the Broncos' favor coming into this season. And I think in a year where Patrick Mahomes may be a little hobbled, the window is open for them. Yeah. Who is really the runaway favorite in the AFC this year? Because, for the last 5 to 7 years at this point, right? We've talked Chiefs, Bills, Ravens. Chiefs, Bills, Ravens.
Yep.
Well, the Ravens had a really bad year last year. The Chiefs had a really bad year last year. The Bills now have a first-time head coach. They didn't do a ton to upgrade the roster in the offseason. They're a lot younger than they were in previous years. So, to me, it all is just kind of lining up for the Broncos to potentially sneak right in there and go to the Super Bowl and I think potentially win it.
And real quick with the Bo Nix stuff too, because all three of us said that we're not Bo Nix guys, but two of us have them maybe making the Super Bowl or in Mike's case winning the Super Bowl. You just saw what happened last year with the Seahawks. You don't necessarily need elite quarterback play to win the Super Bowl, which is crazy to say because in the NFL, you would like to have elite quarterback play to be able to get to the Super Bowl.
You haven't needed it for a couple years, though. Nobody is sitting around and slamming the table besides Philadelphia Eagles fans to tell you that Jalen Hurts is an elite quarterback.
Yep.
The 49ers made multiple Super Bowls with zero elite quarterback play.
Absolutely.
Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy.
Yep.
They made an NFC Championship. They were starting Josh Johnson that year. I mean, in that game, and they almost won it. So
and to stick into the division at least with Pat Mahomes and whoever the Raiders quarterback is, those are two quarterbacks that are going to need to elevate the roster around them. Their wide receiver room and the weapons around them aren't that elite or that great. Bo Nix doesn't need to do that. These guys, the wide receiver room and the talent around them, that offensive line, he doesn't need to be the guy to lead this team. He's got plenty of talent to elevate him and his play. And Sean Payton, Mike said it, Super Bowl winner, elite play caller. I trust anything that he can throw at this with create with this offense. So you don't need Bo Nix to be Pat Mahomes or Josh Allen to win the Super Bowl this year.
I guess for me to take that next step.
Just to cut you off.
Okay, please.
For me, this is a team that, this is a quick thought, that's why I wanted to get it. They have taken advantage perfectly of the idea of having a quarterback on a rookie contract and not having to pay him a lot of money and stacking up the roster around him and not asking him to have to be a superhero. When they eventually pay Bo Nix, we're going to have different conversations about the Broncos. But for right now, I think they're in a perfect spot, and I think everything is just kind of broke in the right way for them right now.
And I want to say, too, I'm saying they're a potential playoff team around 11 wins on the year. It's not like I'm just completely off the Broncos. I guess for me to really take that next step in believing in the Broncos is I just want to see them start putting some inferior opponents away. That was my biggest gripe with them all year, is they just, I'm beating a dead horse, and I've said it enough times, but I think for me this year, if I'm going to take that next step in believing they could be that team to go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, and what I think is going to be a much tougher AFC playoffs this year than it was last year, if you have, hopefully a little bit better Bills team. As a Bills fan, I'm hoping you have Lamar Jackson and the Ravens back in the playoffs. You have Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs potentially back in the playoffs. I mean, you never know with Joe Burrow and the Bengals, but if they make the playoffs, they're a team that you're going to have to deal with it. When you play them, that's not going to be a fun game to play. You have a team down in Jacksonville that seems to be really turning a corner down there and getting better. I do think the AFC playoffs are just going to be a little stronger this year than they were last year, and for me to really take that next step in believing in the Denver Broncos, I just need to see them starting to put away some of these inferior teams, which was an issue for them last year. There's no question about it. And to Mike Rose's credit, he's right. Bo Nix was good late in those games at putting those games away and finding a way to win those games. But if I'm going to believe you can win the Super Bowl, I don't want to have to watch you pull out a last-second victory against the hapless New York Jets. That's where I'm at on the Broncos.
I will also say, if you look at a lot of these games, right, if you really dive deep into this schedule, which I won't go too crazy on it, but a lot of these games that we're talking about where they're playing the Jets, that was a game in London. That's a tough situation to be in. The Houston game is against A, arguably the best defense in the league last year, and B, it was another road game. That game against Commanders was a road game. Was a
backup quarterback in both those cases, though.
Right, but Justin Fields was technically the starter, but he shouldn't be, but he was. So, we're talking about a lot of road games in these spots. They did absolutely bury the Bengals in a home game last year, and they did bury the Cowboys in a home game last year. So it's not like they weren't putting anyone away. It's not like they were in a one-score game every single week.
That was also a backup quarterback in that Bengals game, by the way.
But it was a backup quarterback who the week prior came back at the end of the game and beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. So
I also
just can't discount him too much.
I also just don't think, you could talk about them being in all these close games last year. I just don't think they'll be in that same situation this year. I think this roster and this offense with Jalen Waddle is just going to improve. I think as a whole is just going to improve, and they're just not going to be in these situations next year.
And I think a lot of these games, like if you watched these games, that a lot of them were just kind of like weird games. Like that Giants game was just like a wacky kind of game.
Where they came back like 20 points in the fourth quarter to win that one.
And we had like no tape on Jackson Dart at that point. He went bananas and they ended up winning that game still. They went on the road and beat the Philadelphia Eagles last year when, that was week 5? I mean, people were still feeling pretty good about the Eagles at that point. They went on the road and beat a really good Eagles team. So, I don't want to discount what they did last year too much. Another game you don't mention at the end of the year is they beat the Green Bay Packers, who were a really good football team last year. And, they beat them. So, there were some ugly games last year. I don't dispute that. Nobody pulling up the New York Jets film and saying, look at this. This is the team that's going to win the Super Bowl next year.
Exactly.
And showing that film.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at it a little deeper, I think you can justify, I guess, so to speak, some of the way some of these games played out. And at the end of the day, they still won.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I was like, they won the games, but it's a good thing to be able to win these close games.
If you win, you win. I've always said, winning is the most important thing, and they did. And I think we've all kind of made our point here. So I think this is a great time now to transition and bring in live from somebody's grandmother's attic in Perry, New York, Christopher Yazzie, Denver Broncos superfan. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, KG. Obviously, you're a big Denver Broncos fan. You and me are good buddies. We talk about the Denver Broncos all the time. You and me like to smack talk each other about our teams.
I was going to say let's not hold any punches here. Let's get right into it because KG and Pete have argued about Bo Nix and this Broncos team a lot, and I don't want to hold any punches here. I want you guys to go all out.
Me and KG have famously crashed out on each other many times over the years.
Absolutely.
But
yeah, I don't see any reason to change that, at this point. And I'm not here to waste anybody's time, also. So here's the deal. So this is an 11-12 win football team in 2026. Okay, this is an 11-12 win team. But we're not going to repeat 14 wins from last year. The schedule's tougher. We're pulling the Rams. We're pulling the Seahawks. We're pulling the Patriots, the Jags, the Bills. The division is going to be tougher. Bottom line, I think KC's going to return to form a little bit. I don't think they're ever going to really reach, their prior peak. I think the Chargers are going to be really good, and I think that they're the biggest threat to Denver in this division. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. It looks like we're expecting Bo Nix to be healthy, coming into the season, ready to go week 1. And my biggest concern with him, and I think he's the most battle-tested quarterback in the league last year as far as close games, stepping up to the plate in the fourth quarter, making things happen and winning football games. But my concern with him is coming off this ankle injury is the mobility. Can he return to 100% the same, mobility that he's had in the past that has been so important to his game for us? That's going to be really important. I'm excited to see how that develops. And then as far as the offseason goes, it was pretty quiet besides the Waddle trade. And I was really, really excited about the Waddle trade for a couple of reasons. I mean, obviously, like Tyler mentioned earlier, it was a really shallow draft this year. At face value, I was looking at a first and a second round pick, and I was thinking, what are we doing? Are we kind of throwing away too much for this? And the more I thought about it with, the draft and the way it was shaping up as far as talent goes, I think it was the right year to do it, especially coming off a situation where, Courtland Sutton is great as your number one, big body, physical guy, makes contested catches. But we didn't have that downfield consistent elite separator, or a guy that can really catch the ball underneath and create big plays. And I think Jalen Waddle, gives that to our offense. So I'm really excited about that. J.K. Dobbins, top 5 in rushing before he gets hurt last year. We lose him, and it completely changes the dynamic of our offense. It become one-dimensional, have to really rely on the screen game, the quick pass game. Kind of to your point, Pete, R.J. Harvey is not that guy that's going to run for us between the tackles. He's a gadget third down guy who makes a lot of plays in space. But Dobbins is going to be huge, but based on our schedule, I don't think we quite returned to that form that we had last year. I know a lot of those games were close. At the end of the day, when you have an elite defense, you're going to play in some close games, if you're not getting, huge turnovers and not trying to stuff the ball down folks' throats. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast, and I think that we did a really, really good job of, coming out on top, in those close games. I don't look at it as a knock. I know that you bring it up a lot, but, a dub is a dub, and I think if we have our quarterback in the AFC Championship, we birth the Super Bowl, appearance for sure. So that's just the way I look at it.
Let's talk about Bo Nix. What's your opinion on Bo Nix? Because I know you and Pete have argued about the Bo Nix talk for all of last season at the very least. Where are you at on Bo Nix?
Here's the deal with Bo Nix, first and foremost. This guy, I love this kid, all right? And I understand, thinking maybe he's a little bit of a loose cannon back there. Maybe he's not the most consistent. At the end of the day, though, I feel like sometimes we're talking about, last year, a second-year quarterback. I understand he's 26 years old, and he played in college for,
forever,
17 years.
Yeah, 26 going on 30.
Right?
Yeah.
So I get it. But the NFL and the college, game are very different. They're played at a different speed, okay? So you can't talk about a second-year quarterback like it's, the peak of his career, and he's been in the league for 10 years. And I think the argument that we can constantly have is that, and I've always compared him to the way that some of these, homers around here, Bills fans, talked about Josh Allen. Bo Nix is never going to be the quarterback that Josh Allen is. Don't get me wrong. My point is, year one, year two, when Josh Allen, made some crazy decisions and people would get frustrated, bad turnovers, you can't act like that is going to be the final product of a guy, when he's in his rookie year or second year. So I think
my argument to that, KG, has always been, though, is that with Josh Allen, you had so much athletic upside that you could always see and so much, potential with the arm and things like that. I'm just not seeing that with Bo Nix, where I can look towards that and be like, all right, yeah, I can see where he might take that step and become that guy.
So are you talking about arm strength or are you talking about mobility?
I'm talking about just as a whole as a quarterback. I don't see the potential in him that I see in Josh Allen as a whole. If we're talking about a quarterback as a whole here.
So like I just said, Bo Nix is never going to be Josh Allen. He's not as physically gifted, and nor is anybody else in the league as far as I'm concerned, okay? Bo Nix is in a system with Sean Payton. I think it's a perfect marriage where we're going to try to prioritize the run when we have our lead feature back, which for us right now is J.K. Dobbins. And you pray to God that he can stay healthy as you inch closer to the playoffs. That's the plan. But I think Bo Nix in a system, especially with a decent defense, when the game's on the line, this kid makes plays, and he does it week in and week out. Are you going to have a bad turnover in a tough spot every now and then? Yes, it's the NFL. All these players on the field are talented, and it's a matter of you're going to get got. You're going to get got more than you get if you get somebody else, right? So it's going to happen, but at the end of the day, this kid's battle-tested. He's winning week in and week out, and it doesn't always look really pretty, but the kid makes plays, he steps up, and he's a leader.
So I got your point here, KG. Let me ask you this. What do you think is Bo Nix' ceiling? The way you've made it sound is you think he has another level he can kind of take it to going into year three, and as we get towards, more towards 30 in his career. What do you think is Bo Nix' ceiling, the peak of Bo Nix?
Okay, are we talking about statistically speaking? What do I think is his ceiling?
However, wherever you want to go with it. If you want to go statistic, or if you want to go like a player comparison, or if you want to go just what you think the peak, the absolute best version of Bo Nix is that we have yet to see.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I don't think Bo Nix is ever going to win an MVP in the National Football League. Okay, I think that Bo Nix is going to be a fantastic quarterback with a lot of poise, a lot of moxie, a lot of leadership for a really long time that produces. Okay, the statistics look better on paper than most people would guess, based on, some of the opinions of him. You're talking about a guy that's throwing for 3,500 yards, a year, his first 2 years, 30 to 35 total touchdowns per season. So I think that he's, number one, underrated. Number two, I think his arm's a lot stronger than a lot of folks give him credit for. Number three, his mobility is actually pretty fantastic. I think a lot of the plays that he makes with his legs for us are gigantic, especially in big moments, third downs. And I know it's easy to look at this wide receiver room right now, especially after the Waddle trade, and say, like Tylor said earlier, he thinks it's the best in the league. Before last year, with some of the growth that we saw with, Franklin and Mims and Pat Bryant, it wasn't even a conversation about that being an elite receiver room. Cortland Sutton's a fantastic receiver. He's a little limited on what all he can do for you, in every facet as a receiver, but fantastic receiver. And those young kids kind of came on, quite a bit as the year progressed. And I think that, Bo Nix deserves a little bit of credit, for how that offense played down the stretch. But yeah, I mean, this guy's never going to be Aaron Rodgers. This guy's never going to be Josh Allen. This guy's never going to be Lamar Jackson.
So who is he going to be?
He's going to be the quarterback that the Denver Broncos
He's going to be
need.
Bo Nix.
Yeah, he's going to be Bo Nix. I want you to say Derek Carr so bad.
No, the way you described him, it kind of sounds like you're giving him like a Russell Wilson type career trajectory.
So I don't think that he's necessarily going to have quite the peak of Russell Wilson as far as a playmaker himself per se, because this team doesn't need him to be, something. We don't need highlight tape Bo Nix week in and week out. And I think when your team is built, we're built to play in low scoring football games. And I don't think that you need highlight tape, attempts out of your quarterback. I think that you need a guy that's going to make the big plays when the big plays need to be made, and that's exactly what he's done, even dating back to last year.
I kind of like that Russell Wilson comp, by the way. I will just say.
Yeah.
I think that comp makes a lot of sense, especially like early career Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Like I can see a lot of similarities in what Bo Nix has done in his first 2 years and what Russell Wilson did, especially in the situations where they went in and had an elite defense that they were playing with.
Yeah, I agree.
And this team is not as talented as some people are saying that it is. I mean, at the end of the day, the majority of our great talent is homegrown, drafted talent like, Nick Benito was drafted in the second round, a few years back. Obviously, Pat Surtain, we drafted him. Sutton, obviously, as well. Bo Nix was drafted by us. There's not much bought talent on this team to speak of. I mean, we brought in Hufanga, obviously. That's not like a crazy splash. We brought in McGlinchey a couple years back on a big contract who's really reliable at tackle, a big vet. Dobbins on a yearly basis here the last couple of years. But other than that, a lot of our talent is homegrown. It's not like we've purchased, some of these elite, crazy physically gifted guys.
You purchased Jordan Humphrey.
Well, he might be the GOAT, is the bottom line. But yeah, and Zach Allen as well. I guess that's the guy I forget about, and I think a lot of people forget about that. That is an elite interior, defensive lineman.
I actually did forget about him.
Yeah, and he's one of the most important pieces of our defense. I mean, he's definitely. I think he's top 3, top 4, piece on our defense.
We didn't mention Jonathan Cooper too much either, and obviously he's pretty good on your defense as well.
Yeah, Jonathan Cooper is a guy that, he might not fill up the stat sheet with sacks, but he's going to fill up the stat sheet with pressures. And I think, statistically speaking, he's like top 10 in get-off in the NFL as far as get-off time.
KG, I know I could go through every man on your 53-man roster right now, and you could give me a 5-minute analysis on them. So before we do that for the next hour, I want to give you an opportunity. I know that you've been listening to us for the last 2 hours while you're doing whatever it may be that you're doing tonight. Let me ask you, before we wrap up here, is there anything you've heard over the last 2 hours you want to come at me, Tyler, or Mike for right now? Now's your opportunity. I'll give you a moment here. If there's anything you've heard over the last 2 hours that you would like to challenge one of us on.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important that we talk about the Raiders being mentioned as a playoff contender earlier in the show. I think it is the most blasphemous, asinine thing, not to knock on my boy Stephen A. Smith style, but it's the craziest thing I've probably heard in a sports conversation in a very long time. I think that the Raiders got better this offseason for sure. I love the Linderbaum signing. I love what they did in the draft. They had quite a bit of capital. Glad they did that. Got deeper at the linebacker position for sure. I really don't know how you approach the Mendoza situation. I know it's easy to say, hey, he should sit half the year, he should sit the full year and kind of, study under the tutelage of Kirk Cousins. But I don't think, you can look at it either way. It's either a win-win or a loss-loss, to lose-lose type situation to sit him or play him. I don't know the last time I saw a quarterback get drafted first overall and not play right off the bat. So I think it's going to be odd to not see a first overall draft pick quarterback start right off the bat. But at the same time, you don't want to put a kid in a position where he's most likely going to fail due to, the product around him and destroy his confidence. So we'll see what happens there. But this is not a playoff contending team. I can tell you that right now. If the Raiders could make the playoffs this year, I will tattoo PDJ's face on my right cheek.
All right. I like that deal.
Okay, I would just like to respond since it was me that was being attacked here a little bit. I will just say that it is not unusual to see a team draft a quarterback high in the draft and make a couple free agent splashes, and maybe on paper initially you don't view it as a playoff team, and that team ends up in the playoffs. I think it happens more often than we realize, and I think the Raiders have a lot more talent than people give credit for, and I think the biggest, most underrated thing with the Raiders is they have an elite coach, in my opinion, now at the helm of that team, and I think that makes a world of a difference in some of these close games they may find themselves in next season. That could make the difference between being a wild card team and not. And, we got 3 wild card teams now. Let's not act like it's world beaters, making the playoffs as the last wild card team in the field. It doesn't take a ton, I don't think, to make the playoffs in the AFC. And so I think it's more plausible than maybe anybody here on the show tonight will give credit for, but I'm okay being on an island with this take, as I always will be with any of my takes.
Well, listen, as a Raiders fan, I'm going to be sitting there and watching every game, rooting for wins, and I'm going to go into this as soon as August comes. I'm telling you right now, as soon as August comes, I'm going to be all bought in and be completely agreeing with Mike, but right now,
it's the biggest crap I've ever heard. I've never met someone who cheers against their teams as much as you do.
But as of right now, as a Raiders fan, I want to be optimistic. I don't know. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, and I'm just going to be like patience. So,
I think the reason I die on this hill as strongly as I do is because, and I'd like your opinion on this, especially Tyler, because I think the majority of the time when you see a quarterback get drafted first overall or just, in general, very high in the draft, they oftentimes are a super physically gifted, franchise-changing talent that could shift the pendulum as far as, football games for a team immediately. I don't know that Fernando Mendoza is that guy where he's your quintessential first overall, uber-talented, physically gifted quarterback that can just dominate out there physically. And I think that he could be a fantastic quarterback in the NFL, especially cerebrally, putting things together, making the right throws, making the right reads. I don't think that kind of a player comes in and changes your franchise that quickly. I think that's going to be a process, and I think he can be a fantastic quarterback for a long time. But that's the reason I feel that way.
Listen, I agree with Mike. I think when it comes down to this offense, it's all about Clint Kubiak because I like Trey Tucker. I like Jalen Naylor. Beyond that, though, there's not much to love with that wide receiver room. If Brock Bowers has an injury history, if that continues, that's a really, really big weapon to lose. So
I think what everybody wants to see is Ashton Genty be able to cross the line of scrimmage without multiple.
And I think we all agree. We think he will.
I mean, Clint Kubiak definitely is he's going to rely on this run game for sure, especially if Mendoza's the starter early. I don't necessarily think that Fernando Mendoza is going to. You want to talk about, again, I said it already, Bo Nix, he doesn't need to elevate the guys around him. I don't think Fernando Mendoza, I think year one, I don't think Fernando Mendoza is going to be able to do that. So that's why I lean the Kirk Cousins start. I just don't think that there's a rush for any of this, and I think if the Raiders have a down year again, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think Clint Kubiak has been promised a multi-year kind of rebuild here, and there's just no rush. So,
I think I'm just much higher on Fernando Mendoza than
I think you are.
Else is.
I think you are. But again, I don't want to get.
I like him a lot.
To answer your question, KG, I do think he is that type of player. I think he's the type of guy who can come in and change the culture of your organization and tilt the scales in football games. And I think we saw it in college. You can say what you want, but Indiana was not going into last year expected to win national championships, and they didn't lose a single game last year. Yeah. Can you credit the coaching and maybe some of the talent around him? Was that a quality football team? Yeah, but nobody was looking at Indiana's roster last year and saying, wow, this is a loaded football team. And Fernando Mendoza went out, he made plays. Next thing you know, the Indiana's got multiple wide receivers getting drafted. Nobody was looking at those guys as NFL wide receivers going into last year.
And Charlie Becker all of a sudden is looking like a first-round draft pick next year.
So do I think Fernando Mendoza is the type of talent that could do that? Yes, absolutely. Is he an elite athlete? He's not going to be running around making plays for you, but he's a winner. He's a proven winner. I think he has the size, the stature, the intelligence, and the physical abilities to stand in there and be one of the best pocket passers in pro football, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him tilt the scales of several games next season as a rookie.
All right.
I do agree that he will 100% change that culture very quickly, and I do believe that he will be very good for that organization for a long time. I just think that those attributes and traits specifically don't translate to that quick of a turnaround at the NFL level based on what else they have on the roster. But I do think from that standpoint, you are very right that he's going to be a culture changer, no question. And that team's going to believe more than they have in a very, very long time.
All right, well, that was an interesting discussion there. I'm kind of glad we got to do that a little bit at the end. However, we are approaching the 11 p.m. hour, and I have to report back here before 6 a.m. tomorrow in the same studio. So, KG, thank you, Christopher Gazine, the man who once threw a 7-iron into the pond at hole 17 at Hickory Ridge. Thank you for joining us here on WBTA First and 15. It was a pleasure having you on. Guys, Mike Rose, Tylor Klien, what are we going to do next week for our division? I have an idea. I'm going to throw it at you guys. If you don't like it, we can go a different direction. But we probably got to go back NFC. We just went AFC. I'm thinking a division that might be a little fun to talk about. The NFC South. You know, the cesspool of NFL divisions might be fun to do. We got to do it at some point, Tylor.
I mean, I'll talk ball about any of these divisions. To say that the NFC South sounds fun, I think is an interesting word choice out of you. But
that's kind of why I would shake my head too. That is a division.
I don't know if I'd call it fun.
We have to talk about it at some point.
Interesting, maybe. I don't know, fun.
Yeah, it's interesting. Listen, I got no complaints. I'll talk, like Mike said, I'll talk about any division any week. I don't care when we do it. If that's the division you want to do next week, I'm for it. But it's definitely not.
If you guys want to veto me, you absolutely can right now.
I'm not vetoing you. I mean, like it's, you know.
And we'll have schedules next week. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll have schedules next week.
All right, so I'll tell you what, we'll knock out Christopher Gazine hanging up. There he's gone. We're all good there. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that jump scare. We enjoyed it too. That's a great time to sign off. We'll see you next week, NFC South, First and 15.
Things are about to get started. It's First and 15.